Chapter 836. Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that his position was not suitable, so he stared straight at the entrance of the divine ruin realm in front of him, pretending to be oblivious to the gazes that were looking at him. However, after staring for a while, he kept feeling the wind behind his neck, and faintly smelled the fragrance of a woman's body. Damn it! What the hell? Yu Qianqiu muttered in his stomach. He held it in for a while, but found that the wind behind his neck was still blowing non-stop. That faint body fragrance was familiar. Thinking about it, other than Jiwu Immortal Monarch and Mu Tianjiao, he did not seem to know any other women in the immortal world. Moreover, this body fragrance did not match the smell of these two women. After a while, the wind behind his neck continued to blow. Yu Qianqiu finally could not bear it anymore. He suddenly turned around and was stunned. He saw Wanling covering her mouth and smiling, then hooking her slender finger at him as a greeting. That beautiful and capable appearance revealed a bit of mischievousness. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while, then turned around and cupped his hands, laughing, hee hee. No wonder this body fragrance felt familiar, so it's big sister Wanling's body fragrance. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding gazes immediately turned towards them. Everyone's gazes were filled with ambiguity and strangeness, sweeping across the man and woman, seemingly trying to find some clues. Who was Wanling? Almost everyone present knew who she was. She was the #1 merchant house in the immortal world, sect master Wan Boxing's precious treasure. If anyone could chase after her, then they would not have to worry about anything in the immortal world for the rest of their lives. Countless rich young masters had pursued her, but it seemed that none of them had succeeded. Could it be that she had an affair with this brat? Actually, they could not be blamed. Yu Qianqiu's words were too ambiguous, saying that this body fragrance was familiar, so it was big sister Wanling's. Anyone who heard it would probably misunderstand. The smile on Wanling's face froze. After sensing everyone's ambiguous gazes, her entire face instantly flushed red. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Who is your big sister? Who knows you? Damn it! Calling you sister is giving you face. Who would have thought that you're already thousands of years old? Even if I add up my 2 lifetimes, I'm not more than 100 years old." Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. He felt wronged, but he couldn't afford to offend him now. He squeezed out a smile and said, "How can I not know him? If I didn't know you, you wouldn't keep blowing on the back of my neck. After we broke up last time, you even gave me this. Don't you remember?" As soon as he finished speaking, he took out the Xian Ziki token in order to save some face for himself. He didn't want others to say that he was a dignified man who was trying to climb up a high branch. A big man still wanted to save some face. He could be suspected of anything, but he couldn't be suspected of living off a woman. While showing it to Wanling, I also wanted to show everyone that we really knew each other. Look. It really is a Zishuan token. Not bad. It can't be faked. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Everyone had reason to believe that with this kid being able to enter the divine ruin realm, he would at most be at the soul formation stage. How could a soul formation stage itinerant cultivator hired by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce have a Zishuan token? This was too strange. The only reason was that it could really have been given to him by Wanling. In the end, Wanling's words confirmed everyone's guess. Wanling's pretty face turned red, and she shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you. Give it back to me." She quickly made a move and snatched back the Zishuan token she had given him. Oh! A series of ohs immediately sounded from the surroundings. Everyone seemed to have understood. Wanling herself seemed to have reacted as well. She held the Zishuan token and froze in place. The 3 Mu brothers looked at each other and held back their laughter. This girl had always been someone who didn't suffer losses, but this time, she had met her nemesis. They were still thinking of taking advantage of this kid, but they didn't expect to be beaten up by this kid in a daze. Now they had suffered a big loss. Nemesis. The sounds of astonishment from the surroundings didn't stop. They were all trying to figure out how Yu Qianqiu and Wanling got together. Wanling quickly sobered up, and her complexion returned to normal in the blink of an eye. She inserted the Zixuan token into the lapel of Yu Qianqiu's chest and said with a smile, "Put it away. Don't mind me, I was just joking with you. Why are you still looking at me? Don't tell me there's a flower on my face." Yu Qianqiu's head was filled with fog. He mumbled an "oh" and grabbed the Zixuan token from the lapel of his chest. Then, he obediently turned around. He muttered in his stomach, "A woman's heart is truly unfathomable. Damn it, you're making a fool out of me in front of everyone. Slut, just you wait. One day, I'll get back this face." He didn't know that Wanling was staring at the back of his head while gnashing her teeth in hatred. Although she had a faint smile of disapproval on her face, she was secretly biting her lips. The three Mu brothers, who knew Wanling very well, immediately felt a chill run down their spines. They cast a pitying glance at Yu Qianqiu. Just think about it, today's events would definitely spread quickly. Wanling's many suitors would definitely come one after another. Based on this brat's cultivation base, which hadn't even reached the immortal realm, he would definitely die a very, very miserable death. Even his dismembered body wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between Wanling's suitors' teeth. The white light at the entrance of the cave suddenly rose sharply, immediately attracting everyone's attention. A woman whose face was covered in blood and her clothes were so ragged that half of her fair and tender back was exposed staggered out. Under the command of the golden-robed guard, she panicked and ran all the way to the empty space below. Someone immediately said in a low voice, "It's a female disciple from Rainbow Cloud's sect." Almost at the same time, several women in fluttering cloud clothes flashed in the air and reached out to support the female disciple who had fled back in a sorry state. As soon as the female disciple saw her fellow sect master, she immediately sat on the ground and wailed, "They're all dead, they're all dead." Her cries were shrill and sharp, making people panic. A cold-faced woman with a pair of sword-like eyebrows frowned and shouted, "What are you crying for? Shameful thing, let's help her back first." Immediately, someone summoned a white robe from the storage bracelet and draped it over the crying woman. Two people worked together to help her back. The sword-like eyebrows woman had fair skin, and her face was thin as if it had been cut by an axe. She was serious in speech and manner, and her eyes were like cold stars as they swept across the crowd. Then, she flashed back to her original position in the air and continued to watch, as if nothing had happened. Not long after, the entrance of the divine ruin realm spat out a burst of white light, and more than a dozen people flew out. What was hard to believe was that these people actually fought their way out, completely ignoring the murderous gazes of the immortal palace guards, as if their eyes were bloodshot. "It's Wan Gu Tong and the hidden dragon manners people," someone exclaimed. Wanling and the rest were so shocked that their mouths could hardly close. Some of these people were indeed Wan Gu Tong's people, but how could they be so crazy as to fight in the immortal palace's forbidden area? Wu Xiong stood on the mountain peak with his hands clasped behind his back, looking down indifferently. "Those who don't leave the realm, kill." His deep voice covered the entire square, reverberating in everyone's eardrums. He didn't even give anyone a chance to wake up and brazenly gave the order to kill. At the entrance of the cave, more than a dozen immortal palace guards attacked in unison, and more than a dozen beams of light shot out. "Ah!" More than a dozen miserable screams abruptly stopped, and the dozen people in the chaotic battle instantly exploded into chunks of flesh and blood. The only disciple who reacted quickly came to his senses in time and quickly escaped the black line drawn by the immortal palace guards not far from the cave entrance, luckily saving his life. The death of the person behind him scared him out of his wits, causing him to fly into the air like a headless fly. Coincidentally or not, Yu Qianqiu, who was swaggering in the middle, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly, "Why is this daddy so unlucky? I've visited the godly ruin realm's entrance twice, but 3 times I've met with such bad luck that I can't escape from. Heavens, are you messing with me? This daddy won't come here anymore, so King unlucky." He was about to dodge to the side and watch the commotion behind him, but who knew that the person who rushed over would immediately turn pale with fright when he saw him, Yu Qianqiu. Like he had seen a calamity, he quickly dodged. He saw this daddy inside. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment, then several figures flashed out, joining hands to restrain that disciple. Judging from their attire, they were Wan Gutong's people. When that disciple in ragged clothes saw that it was his fellow disciple, a look of relief appeared on his bloodied face before his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He was quickly carried away. An uproar broke out in the air. No one knew what had happened inside to force these disciples to such a state. No matter what, there was no need to make a move in the Immortal Palace's forbidden area, right? This was too inconceivable. What exactly happened inside? Du Kairen, Huolianqing, and Yafuzi exchanged a glance. They had long since received the analysis from Du Feng, Huolianqing, and Yafuzi. Previously, they still had some doubts, but now, they were completely convinced. Their hearts were filled with gratification. Just this commotion alone was enough to counter the mockery and ridicule they had received behind their backs. Everyone suddenly thought of the Wan Gutong disciple's shout of Yu Qianqiu before he fainted. Why was he so afraid of Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu was just a rogue cultivator temporarily hired by a small 4-links chamber of commerce. What was there to be afraid of? Everyone's gazes fell on Yu Qianqiu's body. Right now, it was no longer a matter of whether they were looking at him or not. The layers of imposing aura were like raging waves, causing Yu Qianqiu to feel as if he was walking on thin ice. He clenched his teeth and endured it. He could even feel Wan Ling's piercing gaze behind him, dissecting him like a knife, as if she wanted to see what secrets he was hiding. Yu Qianqiu deeply felt that he shouldn't have come here to watch the commotion, but he knew that Wan Ling wouldn't blame him. Thus, he started cursing in his heart again. Bastard! If you fainted, fainted. Why are you shouting this daddy's name? This daddy doesn't even know who you are. Did I offend you? Fortunately, this situation didn't last long, otherwise, Yu Qianqiu would have run away in fear. The divine ruin realm continued to spit out white light, and groups of disciples from various sects who were either in rags, injured, badly mutilated, or had disheveled hair escaped one after another. Each and every one of them was frightened like stray dogs, or perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe them as beggars. Chapter 837. Outside the ruins of God, it was a complete mess. The crowd watching from the sky immediately dashed down, and the originally crowded area became sparse. These were the people who could not help but ask after seeing the disciples of their own sects come out in such a sorry state. This was because such a strange situation had never occurred in the previous meetings of the ruins of God. The disciples who entered this time seemed to have suffered a great calamity. When the crowd looked carefully, they realized that each sect had sent 30 disciples in, but none of the sects had more than 5 people out. The degree of misery could be imagined. The most uneasy people were the people who were still floating in the air. Each of them stared at the entrance of the ruins of God with ashen faces. The white light had already calmed down, and there was only 1 day left before the ruins of God closed. They did not know if anyone else would come out. Most of the people floating in the air held on to a glimmer of hope, because only a little more than 10,000 people had come out, while hundreds of thousands of disciples from various sects had entered. No matter what, there had to be at least tens of thousands more. But looking at the disciples from various sects who had already come out, they were all half dead and in a sorry state. Each and every one of them was at a loss. Every second of the remaining time was torture. They were all the leaders of the various sections. If they were all wiped out, how could they go back and explain it to the sects? Who would dare to pat their chest and say that they did not have any enemies in the sect? Who could guarantee that the enemy would not take this opportunity to attack? Seeing the miserable scene below, Wu Xiong, who was on the mountain peak, frowned. He had presided over the meetings of the ruins of God for several times, but he had never seen such heavy losses from various sections. He turned his head slightly and said in a low voice, "You personally bring people in to see what's going on." A golden-robed man behind him immediately accepted the order and landed at the entrance of the ruins of God. With a wave of his hand, 10 people flashed into the spinning white light together. There were endless questions coming from the area below. The disciples of the various sects who were lucky enough to return feebly recounted what had happened inside. Just as Yu Qianqiu had expected, the disciples of the various sects, for the sake of self-preservation or for the sake of reporting back to the sect, all began to join forces to kill and rob, and the disciples of the weaker sects were eliminated one by one. If there was a battle, there would naturally be sacrifices. For example, if 2 sects joined forces to fight for a treasure, it was inevitable that one of them would suffer a great loss in strength. At the end of the battle, there was a situation where the rare treasures gradually gathered towards a minority of sections. At this time, everyone had valuable rare treasures in their hands. The human heart was unfathomable, and not all of the sects who had preserved their strength could abide by the agreement. Thus, the situation of attacking their allies appeared. The appearance of such a situation was the beginning of a disaster for the surviving disciples of the various sections. Since everyone had precious treasures on them, they were already at odds with each other. If one party took the lead, the second party would follow. In the end, those who did not want to do so were also worried that their allies would do the same. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, and in order to protect themselves, it was not uncommon for them to strike first. The situation immediately spiraled out of control. In the end, the surviving teams were basically the best of the best in the immortal world. Everyone knew that the reason why sects that had reached this level of strength still participated in the Divine Ruin Realm gathering was not only to fight for rare treasures, but also for face. They were striving to surpass their opponents. The most important thing was the sect ranking competition that happened once every 100 years. This kind of major event that belonged to each sect happened not long after the Divine Ruin Realm gathering. The Divine Ruin Realm gathering was also one of the benchmarks for the Immortal Palace's ranking. Of course, the increasing number of rare treasures on the various sects was also one of the reasons why everyone was envious. In order to gain a better future, some people began to fight with their lives on the line. Those who did not want to fight had to fight with their lives on the line to protect themselves. Thus, the crazy killing began once again. What could they do if they did not make a move the moment they met? They could only act first, and by the end, their eyes were already bloodshot. Many people could not bear such torment and were almost driven crazy. However, no one dared to quit early. After all, not every sect was as lucky as Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. The elder leading the team was their father. Kill. Kill again. Crazy killing. Either you die or I live, everyone fought crazily. With great difficulty, they endured until the time when the Divine Ruin Realm was about to close. Everyone prepared to leave as quickly as possible. However, there were several sects lying in ambush at the exit, trying to take advantage of them. As a result, a large number of people blocked the exit. In addition, there were people rushing over one after another. As a result, the situation of enemies meeting each other constantly appeared. It was a disgusting cycle. Thus, the most tragic situation appeared at the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that there were mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. Every one of them had become murderous demons. Some of them had already lost their minds from the killing and killed anyone they saw. There were even many cases where they mistakenly killed their own sect members. The disciples of the various sects chattered endlessly. Their sorrowful cries and complaints mixed into a mess. A bloody and incomparably cruel scene of slaughter gradually appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Even the elders leading the various sects, who were experienced and knowledgeable, sucked in a cold breath when they heard this. They felt a chill run down their spines. No one would have thought that the divine ruin realm gathering this time would be so cruel. Du Kairen, Huoyinqing, and Yafuzi looked at each other in shock. They could not help but rejoice that the disciples of their sects had recognized the situation in time, so they did not end up being completely annihilated. This was especially true for the first two relatives. Their hearts were thumping non-stop, and they were already thanking the heavens in their hearts. If they had not withdrawn in time, it was unknown whether their sons would have been able to return alive. The most precious thing was that these two families were the only sects that had not lost a single person and had completely preserved their strength. Behind the crowd in the sky, Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, Shui Mingqing, Mu Tianzhao, and the others had all arrived. When they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. While they still had lingering fears, the one they admired the most was Yu Qianqiu's foresight. As expected, it was extremely tragic. Mu Tianzhao sighed softly, and her eyes dimmed slightly. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu sighed as he stared at the desolate scene below and shook his head. He rejoiced that he had escaped in time with the lords of the various countries. Otherwise, it would be strange if they did not suffer heavy losses in such a chaotic battle. He did not realize that such a huge variable had appeared in the gathering of the divine ruin realm this time, and it was more or less directly related to him. It would not be too much to say that he was the main culprit. However, he was, after all, standing in a corner and looking at the overall situation. He did not realize that he was the one standing on the hillside and inadvertently rolling a small snowball down. As for the consequences of the snowball rolling down, and how big it rolled in the end, he had already left. Most of the people in the divine ruin realm were dead, and no one could trace the countless broken clues to him. This was the conclusion of the jinx, Wu Sihai, that no matter where he went, there would be no peace. It would be a miracle if nothing happened. For example, the Eastern Holy Land that had been quiet for more than 100,000 years. Once this guy went, everything was finished. The white light at the entrance of the divine ruin realm swallowed again, and it immediately caused the eyes of the people waiting in the air to emit a light of hope. However, the light of hope was immediately extinguished. The people who came out were the people from the immortal palace who had entered the divine ruin realm. The person in the lead flashed to the peak of the mountain, and with a solemn expression, he cupped his hands and reported to Wu Xiong, reporting to Great Commander, "There are corpses everywhere at the exit, piled up like a mountain. We have circled around the small area, and there are corpses everywhere. There is not a single living person. I'm afraid that everyone who can come out has already come out. Should we disperse them?" Wu Xiong raised his hand slightly, and his gaze swept across the area below. His face was still calm, and he said indifferently, "Let's wait a little longer. Before the divine ruin realm closes, some of them will not give up." "Yes." After that person responded, he quietly retreated behind Wu Xiong. The disciples of the various sects who were battered and exhausted in the field below were brought back one after another. The leading elders of the various sects were still floating in the air, waiting. Especially those who had not seen the disciples of their sects come out, they were still waiting with the hope of getting lucky. However, the final reality was cruel. The divine ruin realm had been open for a month, and the faint sound of thunder could be heard from the cave in the belly of the mountain. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the spinning white light suddenly expanded, then rapidly rotated and shrunk, becoming smaller and smaller, until it turned into a white dot and disappeared. Silence reigned. After a long time, some people breathed out a sigh of relief, and more people were dead set on leaving. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Even those inner sect disciples who were lucky enough to return did not have the slightest trace of joy on their faces. Their expressions were more solemn. This incident was worth reflecting on. Looking at the final result, among the tens of thousands of sects and chambers of commerce, almost half of them did not return. The 50 million divine grade spirit stones they paid could be said to be a loss of blood and sweat. There was no need for the people from the immortal palace to disperse everyone, as everyone had already returned in silence. Yu Qianqiu sighed and shook his head. Just as he was about to return, who would have thought that when he turned around, he would be stunned to find Wanling looking at him with a smile on her face, and the three elders behind her were also staring at him coldly. Yu Qianqiu, where do you want to go? Wanling said with a smile. I'm not your man, why do you care where I go? Yu Qianqiu politely squeezed out a smile. I've been staying at the Mythical Fire Palace's shops for a long time, of course I'm going back to the Mythical Fire Palace's shops. He even nodded to Du Feng and the rest, signaling them to wait for a moment. Wanling turned to look at them, then approached Yu Qianqiu. Her face was almost touching Yu Qianqiu's ear as she whispered in a low voice, since my Wangu Tong's disciple knows you, there must be some story between you two. Why don't you come to my shop and discuss it in detail? I don't know him at all, Yu. Yu Qianqiu waved his hands, but before he could finish his words, Wanling had already grabbed his wrist, forcefully dragging him away. The three Mu brothers stared at each other with their mouths agape, then a bitter smile appeared on their faces. It seems like the young miss really bore a grudge against Yu Qianqiu this time. She probably wouldn't be satisfied until she played him to death. The three Mu brothers shook their heads and sped away. Du Feng and the rest looked at each other, realizing that this Yu Qianqiu was really unfathomable. Since when did he get involved with Wanling? Did they see wrongly? Wanling actually held his hand and led him away in front of everyone. Chapter 838. Wanling was dragging a man. The people from the various sects who had forgotten about the two of them because of the incident in the Divine Ruins realm were all tongue-tied when they witnessed this shocking scene. It seemed like the two of them really had something going on. Mu Tianjiao bit her lip as she watched the two figures disappear in the direction of Wang Gutong's shop. She couldn't help but ask herself in her heart, if I had a background like Wang Gutong, would I be able to fight for it? Her dejected gaze gradually became resolute, as if she had made up her mind about something. What the hell is old geezer Wan Boxing's granddaughter doing? Wu Xiong murmured from the top of the mountain, similarly confused. After pondering for a long time, he waved his hand at the people behind him. The people from the Immortal Palace immediately got busy and began to set up a formation to seal the mountain. Not long after, a misty white fog rose from the ground, shrouding the entire stone mountain without a trace. After the various sects returned to their respective shops, those sects with disciples who had returned by luck, although suffered heavy casualties, brought back a lot of things. The dazzling array of rare and precious immortal herbs was enough to lift one's spirits just by looking at them. For example, in Wang Gutong's shop, the disciple casually took out some of the items from his storage bracelet. Immediately, a strange fragrance filled the room, and auspicious lights flashed faintly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but take a few more glances. Standing opposite him was the Wang Gutong disciple who had luckily survived in the Divine Ruins realm. After washing up, his face was pale, and it was obvious that he had not fully recovered. Wanling had been watching the changes in Yu Qianqiu's expression. She found that he seemed to be afraid of her just now, but now that he saw the rare and precious immortal herbs, his eyes immediately lit up. She immediately felt a wave of contempt in her heart, and in her heart, she gave Yu Qianqiu a vulgar evaluation. Tell me what exactly happened, how did you know him? Wanling pointed at Yu Qianqiu and asked the disciple. Yu Qianqiu turned around in a daze. This disciple has seen him, but I don't know him. After the disciple bowed, he immediately described the great feat of Yu Qianqiu killing 2 groups of 30 people in the Heartless Palace by himself in the ruins of God. When the 3 Mu brothers heard this, they looked at each other in dismay. Even Wan Ling was re-evaluating Yu Qianqiu. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be able to instantly kill a group of Heartless Palace's disciples. Perhaps only an immortal expert could do such a thing. Even an ordinary immortal expert wouldn't be able to do it. However, when Wan Ling captured Yu Qianqiu, she took the opportunity to inspect him, and discovered that he was indeed only at the deity transformation final stage. He was only at the deity transformation final stage, yet he was able to insta-kill a group of cultivators of the same cultivation base as him. His abilities were not to be underestimated. I can't tell. You have such ability. Wan Ling clicked her tongue as she placed her hands on her waist. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her abnormally plump chest and coughed. What's so strange about that? I've roamed the immortal world for many years, and I don't think I can find a match for any cultivator below the immortal stage. Those who know me call me the #1 expert below the immortal stage. Roaming the immortal world for many years. The #1 expert below the immortal stage. Wan Ling was startled. She slowly turned her head to look at the three people behind her and asked doubtfully, when did the immortal world have such a title? Why have I never heard of it? After the three Mu brothers pondered for a moment, they also shook their heads slightly, indicating that they had never heard of it before. Yu Qianqiu didn't care if they had heard of it or not. In a situation where he didn't know why he was pulled here, he let them slowly think about it. In any case, he knew in his heart that since so many people had come out of the Divine Ruin Realm, it was impossible to hide the fact that he had shown off his skills in the Divine Ruin Realm. Therefore, he decided not to hide it. There was nothing to worry about anyway. It wasn't that he wasn't worried at all. The only thing he was worried about was that the people of the Heartless Palace would find trouble with him sooner or later. After all, he didn't have any sect to support him. I'll pack up later. You guys can leave first. Wan Ling waved at the disciples in the shop. The disciples immediately obeyed and left. Yu Qianqiu looked around and felt that something was wrong. However, his gaze couldn't help but land on a stalk of immortal grass on the shelf. This immortal execution grass was very valuable and was a high-grade immortal grass. The batch that Utopia got was missing this one. Wan Ling waved her hand and released a ray of light, setting up a soundproof barrier. She said with a smile, "You've already collected a lot of immortal grass in the Divine Ruin Realm. Do you still care about this one?" You can't say that. Ugh. Yu Qianqiu was halfway through his sentence when he turned around and said, "I'm just a helper hired by the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. The immortal grass that I collect has to be handed over. How can I not care about such a precious immortal grass?" He almost replied to her words. Fortunately, he realized that this woman was trying to get information out of him. In reality, he didn't know anything. However, he was puzzled. Why was this woman testing him like this? After thinking about it for a while, he came to a realization. The 100 sets of jade archives that he had bought must have made her suspicious. However, how could the change in tone escape their notice? The three Mu brothers exchanged glances. Wan Ling sneered and said, "Do you think I'll believe you? I advise you to tell me honestly so that you won't suffer. You actually want to play hardball with me? Do you really think I'm scared?" Yu Qianqiu's expression turned cold. He said indifferently, "Why don't I understand what you mean by that?" Mu Tong snickered and said, "You still dare to be stubborn. Since you're already here, if you don't tell me the truth, don't even think of leaving this place alive. You've got guts. Are you threatening me?" Yu Qianqiu asked as he stared at him coldly. His calm demeanor made them secretly suspicious, even though they didn't show it on the surface. However, how could they be fooled with just a few words? Wan Ling smiled tenderly and said, "If you think it's a threat, then so be it. However, this kind of threat is still better than us making a move on you. You better think it through. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Yu Qianqiu turned to face the outside of the shop. He looked at the passers-by on the street and said indifferently, "The relationship between me, the spirit cultivation sect, and the mythical fire palace isn't ordinary. If you make a move on me in front of everyone, I'm afraid that those two families won't be so easy to deal with." Before he could finish speaking, he heard a "pah" sound. The gray curtain that was rolled up on the door fell down, completely isolating the situation inside from the outside. Wanling giggled and said, "Do you think that if we make a move like this, who would be able to see?" Yu Qianqiu expressionlessly turned back to look at her and said indifferently, "Everyone knows that I came to your Wangutong shop. Do you really think that those two families are fools?" Wanling shook her head and laughed lightly, "I don't care what your relationship with them is like. Even if I kill you, in a situation where no one sees it with their own eyes, those two families wouldn't dare to go against us Wangutong so openly." Mutong cooperated and shook his hands that were hidden in his wide sleeves. It was a naked threat. "Kill me." Yu Qianqiu sneered coldly, "I'm afraid that even if I lend you 100 guts, you still wouldn't dare to make a move on me." Seeing that he was still bluffing at this point, but was still so calm that it was a little ridiculous, the eyes of the few of them flickered slightly. Wanling's smile didn't falter, "I don't need 100 guts to kill you. If you don't confess now, I'll make you pay, do you believe it or not?" Yu Qianqiu nodded lightly, "I really want to see how you're going to make me pay. I really want to see if Wangutong still wants to live in the immortal world." As he spoke, he took out a golden robe from his storage pouch and slowly put it on in front of the four people. Piously, he put on the robe without a stitch on. The four people's mouths were agape in shock. Mutong's trembling hands froze, the confident smile on Wanling's face had long disappeared. She cried out involuntarily, "Gold-threaded robe." With a quick sweep of their senses, they knew that it was the unique clothing of the immortal palace, the gold-threaded robe. The workmanship of this robe was unique, woven using the unique magic of the immortal palace. The entire robe was made from a single strand of specially made golden thread, without a second strand. The gold-threaded robe wouldn't get dirty, wouldn't get wet in water, and had some defensive properties. Currently, in the immortal world, other than the immortal palace, no one else could replicate it. With one look, they knew it was the real deal. The reason for their shock wasn't the unique workmanship of the robe, or the fact that it had some defensive properties. It was because every set of gold-threaded robe would never be worn by outsiders, because it was the symbol of the immortal palace. Every member of the immortal palace could only have one set. Moreover, they would cast a special immortal spell on the wearer, so if anything happened to the wearer, the immortal palace would know immediately. In the immortal world, if anyone dared to make a move on the members of the immortal palace, the immortal palace would deal with them without mercy. They would immediately send out a large number of people to investigate, and would not rest until the truth came to light. The dignity of the immortal palace could not be blasphemed, and if necessary, they would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. In short, other than severely punishing the culprit, they also had to recover the gold-threaded robe. They wouldn't let it fall into the hands of outsiders, lest someone used it to disrupt the order of the immortal world. Some clues could be seen from how Wu Xiong, the commander of the immortal palace, dealt with the guard of the immortal palace and even stripped off his gold-threaded robe during the meeting in the divine ruin realm. Unfortunately, Yu Qianqiu happened to have a set of gold-threaded robe, and what was even more embarrassing was that no one from the immortal palace in the world he was in went to recover the gold-threaded robe, so it became his personal item. If it was in the past, Yu Qianqiu didn't know that this tattered robe had such a great value, and it was only after a period of understanding that he realized it was actually like this. He was still thinking about when he could make use of it, but he didn't expect the opportunity to come knocking on his door so soon. What Wanling didn't know was that the owner of the gold-threaded robe was long dead, and the one who wore it was someone else. Even if she killed Yu Qianqiu now, the people of the immortal palace wouldn't know. What Wanling didn't know was that if she didn't put down the curtain, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't dare to wear this set of clothes in public, because that would be asking for trouble. However, what Wan Lingqian shouldn't have done was to let down the curtains and create such an opportunity for Yu Qianqiu to show off. This guy was bold and evil. As long as there was a little chance, there was nothing he didn't dare to do. Chapter 839. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's tyrannical power had seeped into every corner of the immortal world for countless years. To the people of the immortal world, he was an unsurpassable godlike existence. The dignified immortal palace was like a towering mountain that made the people of the immortal world feel like ants at the foot of the mountain. They could only look up to it, and very few dared to show any disrespect. As for Wan Ling and the others, once they confirmed that Yu Qianqiu was wearing the golden clothing, they were immediately dumbfounded. They didn't think that Yu Qianqiu was a fake because it was hard for them to believe that someone in the immortal world would dare to pretend to be someone from the immortal palace to swindle people. This was simply challenging the dignity of the godlike immortal emperor. However, Yu Qianqiu's rise in both his previous and current lives mostly relied on seeking wealth amidst danger. As long as there was a tiny chance, he would dare to take the risk and fight for it. To put it bluntly, he was an opportunist, but as an excellent opportunist, his outstanding vision and extraordinary courage were not comparable to ordinary people. This was achieved through failure and blood on the line between life and death. People like him never took being cruel and merciless or swindling seriously, because they were already used to it. Nothing was more important than achieving their own goals. This kind of person would either die a horrible death or be unstoppable. They could always kill their way out of desperate situations and never gave up easily. At this time, Yu Qianqiu didn't think about the immortal emperor and the immortal palace at all. To him, the troubles that might appear in the future were not as important as solving the problems in front of him. Wan Ling's coercion allowed him to find a good way to solve the current problems. You provoked me first, so don't blame me for being impolite. Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. His expression was indifferent. After putting on the golden clothing, his entire aura suddenly changed. He began to emit a faintly discernible aura of a superior as he coldly looked at them. Wan Ling and the others came to their senses and looked at Yu Qianqiu with complicated expressions. They were now sure that Yu Qianqiu had been hiding something with the identity of a rogue cultivator. Otherwise, how could a little rogue cultivator have such a superior aura? This kind of imposing manner was cultivated in a certain environment. It was not something that could be faked. With their eyesight, if it was faked, they would be able to see through it at a glance. I won't retaliate. If you want to kill me, then go ahead. Yu Qianqiu's face was expressionless as he slowly spat out each word. I really want to see if your Wangu Tong's people are really that daring. His gaze was fixated on Mu Tong's frozen hands that were dangling out from his sleeves. The three Mu brothers were shocked speechless. The atmosphere in the shop was unusually heavy. Mu Tong's hands unconsciously lowered, both hands were placed on his waist. The domineering Wan Ling's aura dissipated in an instant. Her arms were no longer crossed as she asked with a complicated look in her eyes, You're from the immortal palace. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully, didn't your Wangu Tong want to rebel? Then make your move. I really want to see how much guts you guys have. He directly emphasized the severity of the problem, slapping a huge hat on Wangu Tong's head. Who else could rebel in the immortal world be rebelling against? Of course it was immortal Emperor Jin Tai. This hat was too heavy. Forget about them, even Wangu Tong's Wan Bushing wouldn't be able to bear it all. Although Wan Bushing was the immortal world's #1 merchant house, he was nothing to immortal Emperor Jin Tai. If the immortal emperor was unhappy, he could kill Wan Bushing at any time without batting an eyelid. Wangu Tong's face paled. If word of this got out, it would be disastrous. Once it reached the immortal emperor's ears, if the immortal emperor really took it to heart, it would be a calamity for the entire Wangu Tong. A sect annihilation was only a matter of time. Although the immortal emperor rarely made an appearance to cause trouble for others, that was because he disdained to do so. However, everyone was well aware of immortal Emperor Jean Tai's fickleness. It was extremely terrifying. Wan Ling's face paled in anger, her body trembled uncontrollably. She had never been wronged like this before. Mu Wan was shocked, this was the first time she had ever lost her temper. He immediately sent a voice transmission to Wan Ling, "Miss, you must endure it, we cannot afford to offend the people from the Immortal Palace. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the entire Wangu Tong family. At the very least, you have to think for your grandfather who has always doted on you. Compromise for the general interest. Think of a way to send him away." "Me? What did I do?" Yu Qincho's tone was overbearing. "Did I say anything wrong? Your Wangu Tong is scheming to harm the immortal emperor's trusted aide. If this isn't rebellion, then what is?" The immortal emperor's trusted aide. Everyone looked at each other, unsure if Huang Xiaolong's words were true or false, but the immortal emperor's trusted aide shouldn't be a spirit-severing cultivator, right? Wan Ling sucked in a deep breath, repeatedly warning herself not to act rashly. Forcing a smile, she said, "This is purely a misunderstanding, we didn't know you were from the Immortal Palace. If we have offended you in any way, our Eternal Trade Association is willing to compensate you." He pointed at the immortal herbs on display. "Everything in this shop, as long as you like it, you can take it." Her heart was filled with endless regret. How could she be so unlucky to offend people from the Immortal Palace? But thinking about it, this person was strange to begin with. If she wanted to blame someone, she could only blame herself for not investigating his background. She must remember this lesson in the future. As the immortal emperor's trusted aide, how can I accept bribes from others? You're not insulting me, you're insulting the immortal emperor. Yu Qianqiu bellowed, slamming another oversized hat onto Wan Ling's head. The few of them gritted their teeth in anger at Yu Qianqiu's arrogant actions. They really wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu to vent their anger. However, most of the people here knew that Yu Qianqiu had come to Wangu Tong's shop. Once the Immortal Palace found out that something had happened to him, the first person to be implicated would undoubtedly be Wangu Tong. Wan Ling sucked in another deep breath, gritting her teeth. "What do you want before you stop? As long as someone dares to plot against the Immortal Palace, I will investigate to the end. The Immortal Palace's dignity is not to be violated," Yu Qianqiu said with a righteous expression. Mu Wan took a step forward, cupping his hands in greeting. "This is indeed a misunderstanding. I hope honored sir will be magnanimous. We have some friendly relations with Great Commander Wu Xiong, the host of the Godly Ruins Realm meeting. How about this? We can invite Great Commander Wu Xiong to be the mediator, to prove our Wangu Tong's innocence." Motherf ****. You want to use a big shot to pressure me? Let's see who's suppressing who. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, proudly declaring, "I'm one of the Immortal Emperor's secret agents. All the information I obtain must be directly reported to the Immortal Emperor. He, Wu Xiong, doesn't know me, and I don't want to know him either. However, I do want to know if a mere great commander like him has the right to interfere in my affairs." A secret agent personally sent by the Immortal Emperor. This news was too shocking for these people, but thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. Perhaps this was one of the Immortal Emperor's methods to strengthen his control over the immortal world. Especially when Yu Qianqiu said that he was one of the Immortal Emperor's secret agents, it clearly showed that the Immortal Emperor didn't only send out one secret agent, there might be many more. And this Yu Qianqiu had always been hiding his identity, but in the end, he was forced out by these people. Everyone was dumbfounded once again. Wan Ling, who had always been brimming with confidence, suddenly felt like the world was spinning around her. Offending a seemingly insignificant nobody, never in her wildest dreams would she have guessed that the person standing behind him was the most terrifying person in the entire immortal world, directly dragging the Immortal Emperor into the picture. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? These people weren't idiots, they weren't so easily deceived. But the golden woven robe on the other party's body proved that he was indeed someone from the immortal palace. Not to mention, even if someone was trying to deceive them, who would have the guts to recklessly drag the immortal emperor into the picture? Because doing so would only lead to death. Fear and panic finally appeared on these people's faces. Due to Wang Gutong's coercion, they actually exposed the immortal emperor's secret. Once this matter was exposed, even if they didn't rebel, the immortal emperor wouldn't spare Wang Gutong. This time, they were in deep trouble. Wan Ling's face was filled with panic, her mind was in a complete mess. The only reason she dared to do anything in the past was because she had an extraordinarily powerful grandfather backing her up. But now, the trouble she caused was too big, directly dragging the immortal emperor into the picture. This was not something her grandfather could handle. What should she do? Mu Wan calmed himself down, decisively saluting Huang Xiaolong once again. This time, we were wrong, but anything can be discussed. I believe that since Honored Sir is willing to reveal such a secret, we still have a chance to let this matter go. Whatever conditions Honored Sir has, please state them, everything can be discussed. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Wan Ling, noticing that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. He slowly took a few steps forward, stopping in front of Wan Ling. Under the worried gazes of the three Mu clan brothers, Yu Qianqiu slowly reached out his hand to pinch Wan Ling's delicate chin, lifting her slightly lowered head up. His hand was not honest, unscrupulously caressing her chin, her white neck, and her face. The faces of the three Mu clan brothers instantly darkened. They were originally entrusted by Wan Boxing to protect Wan Ling. Now that Wan Ling had suffered such a great humiliation, Mu Tong, who had a bad temper, was about to make a move, but Wan Mu grabbed his arm and slowly shook his head with a gloomy expression, signaling him not to be impulsive and to wait and see. However, the uncontrollable strength in his hand caused Wan Tong to feel a dull pain. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's eyes had been paying attention to the movements of the three people. He had taken such a big risk, so he had to put on an act. If he didn't show the arrogance of the immortal palace, he was afraid that it would cause more suspicion in the future. He was also throwing caution to the wind. Wan Ling, who had always been high and mighty, had never suffered such humiliation. Even if it wasn't for herself, she had to endure it for her grandfather. In an instant, two crystal-clear tears directly fell from her eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and her voice trembled as she said, "What do you want?" Chapter 840. I don't want anything, but you have done something wrong, so you have to pay the price. The hand that was holding Wan Ling's chin felt Wan Ling's body tremble slightly. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth hooked up into a faint smile. He wanted to destroy the arrogance that she was born with, to leave a shadow in her heart, so that she would have to respect him when she saw him in the future. Otherwise, this kind of girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would easily take revenge, and she would be completely afraid. Warm tears flowed down her cheeks and fell on Yu Qianqiu's finger. Yu Qianqiu lifted that finger, letting the tears flow to the tip of his finger, and lightly tapped it on Wan Ling's red lips. Wan Ling's body trembled a little violently. Yu Qianqiu smeared her tears on her red lips, and said with a light smile, "Don't be nervous, I won't do anything rude to you. Just based on your looks, I won't take a liking to you." Women were really strange creatures. Just a moment ago, because she felt humiliated, she shed tears of grievance, and now hearing the other party say that she was ugly. Wan Ling's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and she stared at Yu Qianqiu with a gaze that seemed like she wanted to bite someone to death. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows, pinched her nose, and shook it. "Don't be so fierce, I didn't say anything wrong, you really don't look good. At least compared to my woman, you really don't look good." Paw! Wan Ling slapped away Yu Qianqiu's hand that was pinching her nose. That guy didn't know how to be gentle and protective of the fairer sex, and his hand was really heavy, causing her pain. Wan Ling was provoked to the point that she couldn't take it anymore, and she roared, "What do you want?" The three Mu brothers immediately tensed up. They didn't expect that she still couldn't hold it in, and her big missy temper still exploded. The three of them stared at Yu Qianqiu. If they had no choice but to change the outcome, they could only kill Yu Qianqiu and think of a way to salvage the situation afterwards. Yu Qianqiu stared at Wan Ling's red nose that he had pinched, and then looked at her tear-stained face. He unceremoniously stretched out a palm and waved his 5 fingers in front of Wan Ling's eyes, saying, "Fixed price." The 4 people present were stunned. Wan Ling was startled and asked, "What do you mean?" "Nothing much." Yu Qianqiu wagged his 5 fingers nonchalantly. "Fixed price, 50 billion divine grade spirit stones. I'll act as if nothing happened." In any case, he was ready to risk it all. He had already pretended to be an immortal emperor. If something were to happen, he wouldn't have a good ending even if he didn't take the 50 billion. He might as well take the opportunity to solve the problem in front of him. The 4 of them looked at each other in dismay. So, he was just trying to extort spirit stones. When Wan Ling regained her senses, she sneered, 50 billion divine grade spirit stones. You must be joking. Yu Qianqiu placed his hands behind his back, shaking his head. 50 billion divine grade spirit stones is nothing to the immortal world's #1 trading house. Then again, if you feel that Wang Gudong's safety is not worth 50 billion divine grade spirit stones, then act as if I didn't say anything. We'll do what we should do. With that said, Wan Ling turned around and walked away. It wasn't easy to find a good solution. How could Mu Wan let him go just like that? What did money count for? To Mu Wan, Wan Bushing's safety was the most important. Mu Wan's clear voice resounded, "Wait. Everything can be discussed." Yu Qianqiu swiftly turned around, pointing a finger at Mu Wan as he said to Wan Ling, Look, this is the proper way to deal with things. I admire it the most. You should learn more from Senior." Ignoring Wan Ling's murderous glare, Wang Xiaolong turned to Mu Wan. "In truth, there's nothing to discuss, a fixed price of 50 billion divine grade spirit stones, not a single piece less." 50 billion. Mu Wan's voice was solemn. "Isn't that a little too much? We don't have that many spirit stones on hand. Grand Elder, ignore him. He's clearly trying to blackmail us, he's clearly trying to frame us." Wan Ling pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu, gritting her teeth. "Don't give him even a single piece of spirit stone, at most we'll just die together, spreading the news of him extorting spirit stones from us. Even the immortal emperor won't spare him. Let's see if he dares to speak of this matter again." The 3 Mu brothers' eyebrows twitched slightly, as if they were tempted by Wan Ling's words, and hesitated. Yu Qianqiu chuckled, "You want to play ruthless with me? Fine. Then we'll see who's more ruthless. But let me tell you, I'm still the immortal emperor's trusted aide. Maybe I'll be unlucky, maybe I'll be fine, but even if I die, I'll drag your entire Wangutong family down with me. After all, you were the ones who bullied me first. Farewell. Forgive me for not accompanying you." With a flick of his sleeves, Wang Xiaolong strode out without looking back. Mu Wan's silhouette flickered, blocking Wang Xiaolong's path, clasping his fists together. "Since you're seeking wealth, then there's still room for discussion. Why must you push things to the extreme? Losing both your life and wealth is not something you and I wish to see." "I knew it. The barefoot is not afraid of the shoe wearing." While Yu Qianqiu was feeling complacent, Wan Ling's angry voice sounded behind him. "Grand Elder, let him go. I don't believe our big trading house can't win against a little dog like him. Look, she's scolding me. There's no room for discussion." Yu Qianqiu turned around, pointing a finger at Wan Ling as he snarled at Mu Wan. "Just now, seeing your sincere attitude, I decided to turn a big problem into a small one. Taking 10 billion divine grade spirit stones would be enough. But she actually called my immortal palace's people dogs. This is intolerable." Wan Ling's 5 fingers dangled from his palm as he yelled, "I've already eaten a weight and steeled my heart. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones, not a single one less, or else there's no room for discussion." Hearing this, the 3 Mu brothers' expressions stiffened, a hint of reproach in their eyes as they stared at Wan Ling, as if saying, "Just because of one sentence from you 40 billion divine-grade spirit stones gone. You." Wan Ling's blood rushed to her head, turning her face bright red. She nearly vomited blood from anger. Her body trembled as she pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu, you, but she couldn't form a complete sentence. She had never been abused like this in her entire life. The elegance she had in the past, the disdain and indifference towards her pursuers, all the noble and aloof temperament had vanished into thin air today. She looked like a shrew who only wanted to bite people. Look at her, what's the meaning of this? Do you still have any sincerity to discuss? If you don't want to talk, just say it, I won't force you. Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of air, then undressed himself, taking off the golden robe he was wearing and shoving it into his storage pouch. Mu Gu, who had not spoken a word from the beginning until now, suddenly walked to Wan Ling's side, sighing softly, "Your grandfather trusts you so much, he didn't tell you to harm him." Gulp. Wan Ling's throat emitted a strange sound, her eyes rolled back. She was so angry that she fainted on the spot. Mu Gu reached out to support her, looking at his 2 brothers in surprise. "Did I say something wrong again?" Mu Wan and Mu Tong exchanged a look, speechless. Yu Qianqiu was also stunned. He didn't expect this woman to be so narrow-minded, so careless. He didn't even consider how vicious his words were. He had caressed Wan Ling's face, and she had swallowed her anger for the time being. But of all the things he could have said, he just had to say that she was ugly. Little did he know that there were some women. If you hit or scold them, they could endure it, but if you said she was ugly, they would remember you for the rest of their lives. It was at that moment that Wan Ling lost her cool, retorting in the manner of a flustered and exasperated woman. Subconsciously, she wanted to refute the other party's words to prove that the other party's words about her were wrong. In short, she wanted to prove that the other party's words were not right, so the words about her being ugly were naturally wrong. The logic of a woman was often inconceivable. This kind of situation usually appeared between women. She was already angered to the point of vomiting blood by Yu Qianqiu, and what made it even more difficult for Wan Ling to bear was that even her own people were helping her opponent. Mu Gu's words made things worse, so she directly fainted. What kind of status was this? How noble! Those were all extras, they could not defeat human nature. With this fainting, all of them became fleeting clouds. Yu Qianqiu coughed, breaking the silence. 50 billion. Are you giving it to me or not? Mu Wan's gaze retracted from the fainted Wan Ling, frowning. We can give it to you, but we don't have that many spirit stones here. Yu Qianqiu swept his eyes over the items in the shop, raising his eyebrows. With your Wan Gu Tong's reputation, it shouldn't be a problem to borrow some from the neighbor next door, right? How can we trust that you won't pester us after taking the spirit stones? Mu Wan asked. Yu Qianqiu pursed his lips at the unconscious Wan Ling and said, just as she said, you can leak the matter of my corruption and bribery when the time comes. But, do you think I'll take that risk after getting the money? That's why I said it. You can rest assured. Good. I promise you, I'll give you 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. But if we wait for her to wake up, we won't be able to use such a large amount of spirit stones. Mu Wan said, looking at Wan Ling. Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes and said, isn't that nonsense? Look at her, do you think she's someone who would give me money? Don't worry, after she wakes up, we'll slowly persuade her, there shouldn't be any problems. But I'm warning you, if you still pester us after getting the money, I'll make you wish you were dead. Mu Wan warned, a cold light glinting in his eyes. Enough. Enough with the nonsense. After you get the money, Come look for me at the mythical Flame Palace, but don't make me wait too long, I don't have that kind of patience. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, walking to the door with a satisfied expression. He lifted the curtain and walked out. Mu Wan looked at the swaying curtain, sighing softly. He turned around and nodded, "Wake the young miss up. We need to persuade her, facing the immortal palace, we can't afford to be rash." Mu Gu's 5 claws condensed, and a thin mist-like golden gas quickly seeped into Wan Ling's head. Not long after, Wan Ling faintly woke up. Before her eyes had completely opened, she could hear her muttering, "I can't give it to him." Chapter 841. After the end of the Divine Ruin Realm gathering, the huge plaza did not show the same prosperity as in the past. There were very few people on the streets between the shops, and the atmosphere in the entire plaza was heavy and oppressive. In the past, after the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, there would be a lot of buying and selling, but now, it seemed like there was no interest. Normally, after the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, the great commander Wu Xiong sent by the Immortal Palace would evaluate the various sections. However, this time, as soon as the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, Wu Xiong brought a large group of people from the Immortal Palace back to the Immortal Palace, almost without stopping. Was Wu Xiong's attitude telling everyone that there was no winner or loser in this Divine Ruin Realm gathering? As a result, many sects that didn't gain anything from this trip tore down their shops and went back home. The sects that had some gains were left speechless. There was even an entire row of shops that were torn down to the point that only 1 or 2 shops were left. There were even more disgusting sects that directly smashed their shops, making the remaining shops look like they were in a garbage dump. With one sect doing such a prank, other sects immediately followed suit. In any case, this broken shop was not worth much. After a day or two, the huge plaza had become a real garbage plaza. Looking at it from the sky, it was a scene of desolation, completely different from before the Divine Ruin Realm opened. Du Feng and the others stood on top of an abandoned shop, looking around at the miserable surroundings, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. From time to time, they could see sects packing up and leaving, and the number of people in the huge plaza was decreasing. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said in surprise, "Didn't they say they would trade for a while? Why are they all leaving? Great Commander Wu Xiong has left, and the sects still have to rush back to report the details. There is no need to stay." Du Feng sighed. "But there are also many sects that have gained a lot. So many things are piled up in their hands." Before Yu Qianqiu could finish, he saw Du Feng wave his hand and say, "This is not a problem at all. Everyone has shops in the various immortal domains. I believe that the psychedelic immortal city will usher in a peak of trading." The current Yu Qianqiu also knew about the hallucinatory immortal city. It was the largest commercial city in the immortal world. It was said that it was extremely prosperous and huge. All the sects and merchant associations in the immortal world had their own businesses there. Yu Qianqiu silently looked at the everlasting trade hall's location. 2 days had already passed, but there was no response from that side. He couldn't help but wonder if he could get his 50 billion. If Wang Gutong went back on his word, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Snitch to the Immortal Emperor. What a joke. Only the Immortal Emperor knew who he was. Should I exert some pressure on him? Yu Qianqiu was brewing a bellyful of evil ideas, but Du Feng looked at him and said with a light smile, "This time, brother, you showed off his skills in the Divine Ruin Realm. I'm afraid his name will spread throughout the entire immortal world." Yu Qianqiu raised his head and rolled his eyes, exasperated. "You're mocking me. You guys have the support of your sects, naturally you don't need to be afraid of the 7 big sections. But sooner or later, they'll find trouble with me. I'm still thinking of how to deal with them." "What are you afraid of? Don't you have a good relationship with Wan Ling?" Du Feng exchanged a glance with Hui Yunlong and snickered, although Wanling, that woman's cultivation isn't very high, she's still a difficult character to deal with in the immortal world. With her backing you, it's the same as having Wan Bushing backing you up. I think even the 7 big sects will have to think twice. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. Only he was clear about his own matters. 2 days ago, he had angered that woman until she fainted. It would be strange if she could back him up. However, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to expose the matter. He really wanted to borrow the momentum of Wanling holding his hand that day to delay the danger. But he wasn't afraid, he still had something to rely on. No matter who it was, it wouldn't be easy for them to kill him. His trump card wasn't something to be trifled with. As the 3 of them chatted and laughed, several figures landed in front of them. It was Mu Bing, Mu Tianjiao, Nan Tianlong, and Tao Zhong. With regards to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, Mu Bing had probably realized his own shortcomings and had the intention of handing it over to his daughter. Mu Tianjiao stepped forward and cupped her hands, saying, "I'm indebted to all of you for taking care of me all this time. Mu Tianjiao really can't repay you, so please accept my gratitude." She gave a long bow, her soft waist almost forming a right angle. The 3 of them hurriedly reached out to help her up, indicating that there was no need to be overly polite. Du Feng swept a glance at them. It seemed that a running shop couldn't be completely empty. He couldn't help but ask, "Miss Mu, are you preparing to return to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce?" Mu Tianjiao nodded with a smile, but there was a hint of worry hidden in her smile. Yu Qianqiu, who was well aware of this, frowned and said, "If you go back this time, I'm afraid that Chief Fengxing of the 8 Links Chamber of Commerce won't let you go. Do you have any countermeasures?" Before Mu Tianjiao could reply, Hui Yunlong waved his arm and laughed heartily, saying, "Don't worry about this. That dog didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth last time. He actually dared to get involved in the matter between our 2 families and the Heartless Palace in front of everyone. My father has already sent an order back, ordering my eldest senior brother to lead a team to the 8 Links Chamber of Commerce. I reckon that by the time you guys get back, the 8 Links Chamber of Commerce will have already been razed to the ground. Don't worry." Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was deeply moved. No matter where he went, he couldn't avoid encountering the law of the jungle. Big sects were big sections. If they weren't happy, they would raze their opponents to the ground. The 8 Links Chamber of Commerce was really unlucky this time. Mu Tianjiao and the others were stunned for a moment, but then they all revealed expressions of joy and thanked him. Hui Yunlong straightforwardly waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me, no need to thank me. This time, it was the 8 Links Chamber of Commerce that provoked my father. How could my father let them off so easily? This has nothing to do with me. However, if there's a chance in the future, maybe we'll go to your 4 Links Chamber of Commerce as guests. Don't forget about us old friends at that time." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to look at the 2 young masters. He probably wouldn't go to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce again, but it wasn't certain for these 2. It seemed like the possibility was very high. Mu Tianjiao's gaze inadvertently glanced at Yu Qianqiu. She smiled and cupped her fists, saying, "The 3 of you are esteemed guests of our 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't be happier to meet you. How could we not know you? I'm just afraid that you'll find our 4 Links Chamber of Commerce too shabby and refuse to honor us with your presence. Since we're friends, there's no need to say such things." Hui Yunlong looked at the other 2 and said, "Why don't we find some time to go to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce together?" Du Feng smiled and nodded, "Sure," while Yu Qianqiu noncommittally replied with an N. After exchanging some pleasantries, the 3 of them watched as Mu Tianjiao and the other 3 boarded the flying shuttle and left. At the same time, there were also people from the other sects leaving one after another. Hui Yunlong frowned as he looked at the absent-minded Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Brother Yu, my father also wants to return to the sect as soon as possible. What do you think? Do you want to follow me back to the mythical fire palace?" Du Feng stared at Yu Qianqiu with a profound gaze. He knew the secret of Yu Qianqiu wanting to establish his own chamber of commerce, but he didn't know what Yu Qianqiu's intention was to delay the departure of the mythical fire palace. For this reason, he also asked his father to delay the departure of the spiritual cultivation sect because he wanted to see what Yu Qianqiu wanted to do. Could it be that he really had a way to raise the 50 billion that he wanted? Yu Qianqiu, who was deep in thought, looked at the various sects that were flying away and slowly said, "You guys go back first. I still have some things to do. Don't tear down the mythical fire palace's shop, leave it for me to stay temporarily." The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. It seemed that he was prepared to stay here for a period of time. Hui Yunlong asked suspiciously, "Brother Yu, is there something you need? Why don't you tell us? Maybe we can help you." Yu Qianqiu unceremoniously rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, "I've already said that I want to borrow 50 billion from you, but can you help me?" Du Feng saw some clues and pulled Hui Yunlong with a bitter smile. "Let's listen to him, let's go first." But Hui Yunlong wanted to say something but was forcefully pulled away by Du Feng. Yu Qianqiu stood alone on the rooftop with his hands behind his back. He stood there silently for a long time until he saw a streak of light approaching from afar. A few people disembarked from a flying shuttle and it seemed like they were heading towards Wang Gutong's shop. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Everyone was leaving this place, why were there still people coming? Could it be Wang Gutong's people had brought money? Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu's eyes brightened. Without any hesitation, he flew towards the mythical fire palace's shop. By the time he arrived, the people from the mythical fire palace had all left. However, the shop was still neat and tidy, as though it had been specially cleaned. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly as he shook his head. Hui Yunlong, that fellow was too considerate. The people from Wang Gutong's shop had not left yet. In a small room inside, Wan Ling was alone for 2 days. She curled up on a chair, thinking back to the past with a dazed expression on her face. Ever since she was young, there had always been a large mirror in her heart. Ever since she was young, she had been examining herself in front of this mirror, watching as she grew day by day. The beautiful self in the mirror was at first noble, then elegant, then calm and unruffled, then shrewd and capable. A beautiful and perfect woman gradually appeared in the mirror. This was also the image of herself in Wan Ling's heart. She was often complacent in her heart, that was why she disdained those vulgar men, because she felt that none of them were worthy of her. However, the Yu Qianqiu who had the backing of the immortal palace was like a stinking hoodlum, smashing the mirror in her heart into pieces with a single kick. From the broken mirror on the floor, she saw all kinds of distorted images of herself. How could she have such a side to her? Wan Ling was horrified. She refused to recall the scene where Yu Qianqiu lifted her chin, refused to recall the teasing of her red lips, refused to recall the scene where he pinched her nose, refused to recall the scene where she screamed like a shrew, refused to recall the scene where she fainted from anger. Wan Ling suddenly discovered that her nobility, elegance, and calmness were actually so fragile. She was like a layer of paper that was easily torn apart by Yu Qianqiu, thrown to the ground, and trampled on until it was worthless. Chapter 842. Outside the small room, the 3 Mu brothers stood there silently for a long time. They tried to persuade Wan Ling for a long time, but Wan Ling still refused to give up the money, protesting with a stubborn silence. It was impossible for the 3 brothers to take out the money from Wan Ling's storage bracelet. Even if they did, it wouldn't be enough. Left with no other choice, the 3 of them contacted Wan Bushing, recounting everything that had happened. Wan Bushing was enraged, cursing the immortal palace for going too far, cutting off all contact with the 3 of them. The 3 brothers were helpless. Since Wan Bushing had the same intention, what else could they say? However, after a period of time, Wan Bushing took the initiative to contact the three of them again, saying, "I've already asked Old Five to bring the spirit stones." With just one sentence, the contact was cut off again. Clearly, Wan Bushing had given in after his anger. Although Wan Gutong was strong, compared to the Colossus of the Immortal Palace, it was not worth a mention. Especially that immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had terrorized the immortal world for countless years, he was not someone that could be defeated by mere brute force. This terrifying existence was too powerful, no one in the immortal world could be his opponent. Jin Tai's coldness towards the immortal world's people was akin to looking at a bunch of ants. Even the slightest bit of displeasure could cause Wan Gutong to be annihilated. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not a big loss to Wan Gutong, but it was a humiliation that could not be erased. Wan Bushing was filled with hatred, but he was helpless. He could only let out a long sigh in the Myriad Saints' palace. 3 figures descended at the entrance of Wan Gutong's shop. A gloomy-faced fat man walked in with 2 young men. The 3 Mu brothers looked at the 2 young men in surprise, feeling a little strange. The fat man in the lead was Wan Bushing's youngest son, Wan Lihong. The blue-robed man on his left was the Heartless Palace's High Deacon's grandson, Zhang Lianqing, and the white-robed man on his right was the Carefree Palace's sect leader's grandson, Chai Junlang. Both of them had late-stage minor immortal cultivation, similar to Wan Ling. At the same time, they were also Wan Ling's hardcore pursuers. What the 3 Mu brothers could not figure out was why Wan Lihong would bring these 2 people over. The moment Wan Lihong saw the 3 Mu brothers, he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, uncles." Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang also greeted, "Greetings, seniors." The Mu brothers grunted softly. Wan Lihong also saw the doubt in the trio's eyes. She immediately sent a voice transmission, "These 2 brats have been staying on Myriad Saint Mountain. This matter is of great importance. Father is afraid that there will be trouble after paying the money. Thus, he asked me to use Ling Er's name to lure the 2 of them here. If there was still trouble after paying them, I might as well use the 2 of them to implicate the Heartless Palace and the Xiaoyao Palace. Once the Immortal Palace attacks, the 3 forces will be able to hold them off for a while. At least Wan Gutong won't be able to hold them off alone." The 3 Mu brothers looked at each other, then looked at the 2 pursuers of Wan Ling with deep meaning in their eyes. Mu Wan tilted his head towards the small room and said, "Miss is inside, let's go in and persuade her." Wan Lihong nodded and followed the 3 into the small room. Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang looked at each other with hostility. Then, they excitedly followed behind them. When they reached the small room's entrance, Wan Lihong suddenly turned around and shouted, "What do you 2 want? This is a ladies' room, it's not a place for outsiders to enter. Scram back to the Heartless Palace and the Xiaoyao Palace, we don't welcome you here." How could these words sway the 2 of them? The elegant Chai Junlang closed the white jade fan in his hand and smiled apologetically, "Don't worry, 5th Uncle Wan, I won't go in." Wan Lihong shouted angrily, "Scram! Who is your 5th Uncle Wan?" The 2 of them quickly bowed and retreated to a position near the shop's entrance. They could be scolded, but they wouldn't leave. Wan Lihong snorted coldly and entered the small room. Wan Ling, who was curled up in a chair, was initially disdainful when she heard Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang's voices, but her eyes lit up and she suddenly stood up from the chair. When she saw Wan Lihong come in, she immediately bowed and greeted, "5th Uncle." The Mu brothers stared blankly as they discovered that the dispirited and listless Wan Ling had suddenly become so spirited. Wan Lihong casually shot out a ray of light and set up a soundproof barrier. He stared at Wan Ling and shouted in a deep voice, "What do you want this time? You've caused trouble to the Immortal Palace and even offended the Immortal Emperor. Is that someone you can offend? Are you trying to get your grandfather killed?" Ling, and no, she's wrong, but who would have thought that this ordinary-looking guy was actually from the Immortal Palace and was even a secret agent sent by the Immortal Emperor? Wanling pretended to be wronged as she bowed. Then, she revealed a smile and quickly hugged Wanlihong's arm and said coquettishly, I know fifth uncle loves Ling the most. Please spare Ling this time. The Mu brothers shook their heads with a wry smile on their faces. Wanlihong rubbed his forehead, shaking off Wanling's entanglement. He took off the 2 storage bracelets on his wrist and lamented, don't you know how big the trouble you've caused is? Losing 50 billion divine great spirit stones is a small matter, but if you provoke the immortal emperor's wrath, that would be a fatal matter. You're still laughing, is it that funny? Fifth uncle, it's only been a few days since we last met, but you seem to have put on some weight. Wanling said in a serious tone. Really? Are you for real? Are you sure you didn't see wrong? Wanlihong rubbed his face nervously, but when he caught a glimpse of the hidden mirth in Wanling's eyes, he immediately understood that he was fooled. He roared at the top of his lungs, look at the situation, you still have the mood to joke around. Wanling shrunk her neck, but her hands held Wanlihong's hands, taking the 2 storage bracelets from his hands. She bowed apologetically, third uncle, don't worry, Ling already has a foolproof plan. Not only can it protect the 50 billion divine great spirit stones, it can also resolve the possible danger. The 4 men looked at each other, not knowing what she was up to this time. Wanlihong's thick, fleshy face was filled with worry. His eyebrows, which were naturally drooping, curved even more. With a bitter face, he said worriedly, Ling, you've already gone too far this time. Don't mess around again. Fifth uncle, I know you're proud and arrogant, but this is not a small matter, that's immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Our Wangu Tong cannot afford to offend him. If you continue to play, the whole family will be finished. You should take pity on this old bachelor fifth uncle of yours. Wanling lowered her head slightly, the 2 storage bracelets in her hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She bit her lower lip, a venomous light flashed in her eyes as she slowly said, I will give him all the spirit stones, and our Wangu Tong will not touch a single hair on his head. But, if someone else kills him, it has nothing to do with our Wangu Tong. The 4 men were stunned, subconsciously glancing at the room next door. They could roughly guess what she was planning to do. Wanlihong asked suspiciously, you want to lure those 2 fellows to make a move against that Yu Qianqiu? I'm afraid that's not appropriate. Wanling's crafty eyes looked at the 4 men, her voice brimming with confidence, there's nothing inappropriate about it. Killing Yu Qianqiu must be voluntary, there's nothing wrong with that, and I won't make any hints. But once they kill Yu Qianqiu, fifth uncle, you cover. You can't, people can easily recognize your figure. First elder can disguise himself and snatch the 2 storage bracelets back. With first elder's cultivation, snatching the 2 storage bracelets from their hands shouldn't be a difficult matter. Once Yu Qianqiu is dead, he won't be a threat to us anymore. At that time, the ones killing the people from the Immortal Palace will be the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. The Immortal Palace will look for them, it has nothing to do with us. The 4 men looked at each other, feeling that this wasn't very reliable. This was a plot against the people from the Immortal Palace. Not to mention, it was someone directly connected to the Immortal Emperor, there couldn't be any accidents. Wanlihong said with some fear, can they do it? I think those 2 guys are clumsy, what if they can't kill Yu Qianqiu? It shouldn't be a big problem, I've checked Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he's only at the late stage of the transforming spirit realm. If those 2 minor immortals can't kill a late-stage transforming spirit realm cultivator, they might as well just kill themselves, they won't have to come out and embarrass themselves anymore. Wanling sneered, then said calmly, so what if they can't kill him? The ones who did it were the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. Even if we find out that they did it out of jealousy, we didn't order them to do it. If the Immortal Palace wants to implicate them, then the Immortal Emperor should be prepared to kill everyone in the immortal world. In short, we are fine, the ones who will be in trouble are the Heartless Palace and Carefree Palace. I've long disliked the number one sect in the immortal world, the Heartless Palace. They're a bit too arrogant, I might as well use the Immortal Palace to get rid of them. After hearing this, the four of them felt a chill down their spines. They didn't know what this girl was thinking all day long, she could even think of such a sinister scheme. The curtain of the small room was lifted, the Mu brothers and Wan Lihong came out, and began to instruct the disciples in the shop to tidy up the things on the shelves. Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang were worried about the fierce Wan Lihong, so they looked behind the curtain. It was true that the two of them liked Wan Ling, but they were also people who often rolled around with women. After so many years in the immortal world, they had been with countless women, they wouldn't go so far as to sacrifice their lives for Wan Ling's beauty. However, as long as they could get Wan Ling, there was no doubt that they would have an endless supply of spirit stones. With Wan Ling's position in Wan Bushing's heart, she was completely equivalent to a huge prophet. Who knew how many sects were secretly planning this? Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang could be said to have received a death order to pursue Wan Ling, otherwise, they wouldn't have been so shamelessly pestered. After waiting for a while, Wan Ling finally lifted the curtain and walked out. She had changed into a pink floor-length dress, which effectively restrained her impressive figure. The eyes of Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang, who had a lot of resentment in their hearts, immediately lit up, and the little bit of unhappiness in their hearts immediately disappeared. The two of them had a flattering expression on their faces as they shouted in unison, "Wan Ling!" Wan Ling walked gracefully, displaying the noble temperament that she had cultivated for a long time, like a fairy walking on the waves. She walked past the two of them without any hesitation, not even looking at them in the eye. The hem of her dress fluttered, giving off a delicate fragrance, and she directly flew out of the shop. Chapter 843. Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang looked at each other, then rushed to catch up. Wan Ling's flying speed was not fast, and her pink dress swayed in the air, instantly attracting attention. One on the left and one on the right, the two of them chased after her. Before they could say anything, Wan Ling frowned and landed on the roof of an abandoned building. She stared at the two and shouted, "Why are you two following me?" Chai Junlang answered first, "I heard that you were busy here, so I came to see if you needed any help." Zhang Lianqing nodded and said, "Me too." Wan Ling raised her chin slightly arrogantly, and said coldly, "I don't need your help, and I don't need your help either. Don't follow me anymore, or don't blame me for being rude." The two's flattery was immediately stuck in their throats. They looked at each other, and a trace of anger flashed across their eyes. They had the same thought in their minds at the same time. "Stinking bitch, don't be so arrogant. When I get my hands on you, you'll see." Zhang Lianqing's gaze inadvertently swept past Wan Ling's ample bosom, and he looked around with a face full of smiles. "Wan Ling, where are you going in this barren mountain? Do I need to report to you where I'm going?" After Wan Ling threw out that sentence, she quickly flew away at a much faster speed than before, as if she wanted to shake off the two. "Stinking bitch." Zhang Lianqing looked at Wan Ling's graceful figure and scolded in a low voice. Chai Junlang chuckled and said, "I don't care if she stinks, this woman still has some good stuff on her body. If you're too bored to stink, let me." Their voices stopped abruptly, and the two realized that Wan Ling had not flown far away, but had landed somewhere in front of the plaza. The two looked at each other, then quickly flew into the air, and watched as Wan Ling's swaying figure entered a shop. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting calmly in the empty shop, was patiently waiting with his eyes closed. Light footsteps came from outside, and when he opened his eyes, he was startled. He saw that Wan Ling, who had fainted due to her anger, was no longer the same as before. Instead, she had changed into a delightful pink dress, revealing a pair of good breasts that could move a man's heart. It seemed that she had specially dressed up. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up, his eyes slightly narrowed, and he raised his guard. He was worried that Wanling was here for revenge. Wanling leisurely walked toward him. She only stopped when she was only one person away from him. She bit her lips and stared at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated gaze. This caused Yu Qianqiu to become even more cautious. As a result, the two of them silently stared at each other for a long time. One of them had ulterior motives, while the other was cautious. Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang, who were in the air, subconsciously lowered their altitude to listen. What puzzled them was that there was no sound from the shop that Wanling had entered. Seeing that they had already descended to the rooftop of a row of shops, the two looked at each other, and decided to directly land on the street, and looked into the shop opposite them. They saw Wanling's graceful figure standing silently, and it was obvious that it was a man, who was half a head taller than Wanling, and they couldn't see the man's full face. The man and woman just stood there silently, staring at each other. This situation made Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang a little speechless. No wonder this woman didn't like anyone and didn't allow them to follow her. It seemed like she already had someone in her heart and was secretly dating her lover. The two looked at each other, and saw the faint anger in each other's eyes. This woman had a man, but didn't say anything, causing all the men in the immortal world to flock to her like ducks. She was clearly playing with them. Yu Qianqiu's vigilant gaze moved slightly, and he noticed that two people had landed on the street outside. His head moved slightly to the right, and avoided Wanling's obstructed vision, and saw the two people on the street outside clearly. Zhang Lianqing, who was dressed in blue, caused his pupils to shrink slightly. He immediately recognized that the other person was wearing the uniform of Heartless Palace, but he didn't recognize the other person. F***CK. This woman actually brought help. Anger appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face, and the purple fire element stored in his body began to stir. Wanling, who had been biting her lips, saw the reflection of Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. Her eyes flickered slightly, and instantly, her beautiful eyes became watery. She let go of her red lips, and said with a slightly sobbing tone, "I brought the money." Ah! Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and his gaze returned to Wanling's face. After seeing the tears in her eyes, he was momentarily at a loss. He didn't know why she was crying, but it seemed that women were women after all, and couldn't take being bullied. He couldn't help but cough, and said, "It's good that you brought it, give it to me." He very consciously stretched out his hand. Wanling's eyes were filled with hot tears, and she pulled the two storage bracelets from her wrist. Her shoulders trembled, and she sobbed, and said, "Can you guarantee that after you take the spirit stones, you won't pester me anymore?" F***CK. Why do you make it sound like I'm a gangster who lives off a woman? Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Don't worry, as long as I get the right amount of spirit stones, we won't have anything to do with each other anymore. As long as you don't find trouble with me, I won't find trouble with you either." Outside, Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang exchanged a look. The conversation between the two inside couldn't be more obvious. It seemed like Wanling had run into a love swindler, and was being blackmailed by that swindler. Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang originally wanted to be the hero and save the damsel in distress, but remembering that the swindler dared to deceive Wan Bushing's granddaughter, they were afraid that this swindler was not a simple person. Hence, they decided to wait and see. "I hope you remember what you said today, otherwise I won't let you off even if I become a ghost." Wanling wiped the tears off her face with a wave of her sleeve, and slapped the two storage bracelets on her wrist onto Yu Qianqiu's outstretched palm. Choking with sobs, she said, "Remember, don't pester me anymore." Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless. He quickly sent his divine sense into the two storage bracelets. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not a small amount, and it took him quite a bit of effort. After counting, he found that 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones, not one piece more, not one piece less, just right. With the spirit stones in his hands, a huge rock in his heart fell to the ground. Immediately, a smile spread across his face as he patted his chest and guaranteed, "From now on, you go your own way, and I'll go mine. The disputes between us are written off. I hope you can do as you say, otherwise I won't let you off." Inside the shop, Wan Ling threw out those harsh words, then turned around and dashed out while wiping her tears. Ignoring the dumbfounded Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang, she sped away. Women, women. If you can't afford to play, then don't play. What's the point of crying and crying? It's as if I'm a gangster. Yu Qianqiu shook his head, sighing with emotion. He didn't expect his desperate gamble to actually succeed. 50 billion. He got it just like that. His gaze shifted to the two people staring at him from outside, and the complacent smile on his face immediately disappeared. He discovered that he couldn't see through their cultivation. Without a doubt, these two were immortal realm masters, especially those from the Heartless Palace. Yu Qianqiu's steps were steady as he made his way out of the shop. Now that he had gotten the money to register his business, this was not a good place to stay. Song Lianqing and Chai Junlang also couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, thus they dared not act rashly. When Yu Qianqiu reached the shop's entrance and was about to leave, Song Lianqing glanced at the mythical fire palace insignia on the shop, cupped his hands and smiled. "I'm Heartless Palace's disciple, Song Lianqing. Are you from the mythical fire palace?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at him indifferently, and just as he was about to leave with a few perfunctory words, he saw a slightly hunchbacked gray-robed old man walking along the desolate and messy street. After hearing Song Lianqing's words, he subconsciously stopped and looked left and right. Suddenly, he chuckled, "Why does this sound so funny? He's Yu Qianqiu, a late-stage soul formation cultivator hired by the Small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. He killed all the people from your Heartless Palace in the ruins of God. How did he become a disciple of the mythical fire palace?" Sigh. The disciples of Heartless Palace are really getting worse with each generation. The hunchbacked old man shook his head and sighed with emotion as he walked away. The streets suddenly became quiet, and an evil wind blew from somewhere, bringing a chill to the entire street. Damn it. Where did this meddlesome old bastard come from? Yu Qianqiu looked at the receding figure and really wanted to go over and kick him. Song Lianqing's pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at Yu Qianqiu and said indifferently, "You're that Yu Qianqiu?" Although he and Chai Junlang had been staying near Myriad Saint Mountain for a long time, they were not cut off from the news. They had already heard the news that all the disciples of Heartless Palace had been annihilated in the ruins of God. It was said that all of them had died in the hands of a late-stage soul formation cultivator called Yu Qianqiu. He also heard that Wan Ling was holding hands with Yu Qianqiu in front of everyone. From this, he thought of the scene of Wan Ling crying and leaving. Needless to say, this guy was definitely that Yu Qianqiu who was holding hands with Wan Ling in front of everyone. Otherwise, Wan Ling would definitely not show such a weak side. Yu Qianqiu had suspected that these two were helpers that Wan Ling had found. Now that he heard the other party's words, it was definitely not the case. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to not recognize him, and there was no need for them to do this. "Yu Qianqiu is me." Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, "Is there a problem?" Chai Junlang gently opened the white jade folding fan in his hand and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He shook his head and sighed, "I thought Yu Qianqiu was some amazing person. It's you." Sigh. I don't know what kind of drug Wan Ling ate, she actually fell into the hands of such a liar. It's really ridiculous. Song Lianqing revealed a sinister smile and said, "You're really audacious, to actually deceive Wan Bushing's granddaughter. Tell me honestly, how did you force her to submit? If there's a word of falsehood, I'll make you wish you were dead." Chai Junlang's eyes also lit up when he heard that. If he could get hold of the handle that forced Wan Ling to submit, then it would indeed be twice the result with half the effort. The two of you want to make a move on me here. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said expressionlessly, if I remember correctly, Great Commander Wu Xiong has long stipulated that no one is allowed to make a move on this plaza at the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. Although the Divine Ruin Realm gathering is already over, I don't think the two of you have the guts to try it. Chapter 844. As soon as he said that, the two's faces froze, and they couldn't help but look around. This place was already showing a bleak decline, and it would continue to be bleak until the Divine Ruin Realm opened again in the next 100 years. But even so, since Wu Xiong had already spoken, fighting was not allowed in this square outside the Divine Ruin Realm. Otherwise, it would be a challenge to Wu Xiong's authority. Although Wu Xiong had already left, and no one knew if he would remember this matter, if someone spread this matter to Wu Xiong's ears, who knew what he would think? Zhang Lianqing and Cai Junlang naturally knew how powerful the Immortal Palace was. With their little guts, they didn't dare to challenge Wu Xiong's words, so they looked at each other blankly. There were fewer and fewer people leaving in the sky. Yu Qianqiu looked up, then waved at the two with a mocking expression. I'm leaving first, no need to send me off. Stop! Zhang Lianqing shouted. The twisted expression on his face showed that he was enraged by the other party's words. He chuckled coldly and said, I advise you to honestly tell me how you forced Wanling to submit. Otherwise, unless you don't leave this place for the rest of your life, once you step out of this square, you know what will happen to you. Know what? Yu Qianqiu turned to look at the two and said expressionlessly, May I ask what your cultivation is like? Cai Junlang was taken aback for a moment. Then, he waved his folding fan and clicked his tongue. Our cultivation bases are indeed not high. We're only at the late stage of minor immortal realm. However, you don't think it will be difficult for one of us to deal with you, a late-stage divine transformation bastard, right? Ha! The two couldn't help but laugh at the same time. Yu Qianqiu turned a deaf ear to them and replied indifferently, I just want to warn the two of you, sometimes killing doesn't require a high cultivation. Don't force me to do it, or you won't even have the chance to regret it. He had long wanted to test the power of the purple flames to see if killing immortals would feel good, but he didn't want to expose it so easily. In fact, he had been holding it in for a long time. Did I hear wrong? Cai Junlang asked Zhang Lianqing with a teasing expression. Is he threatening us? I think so. Zhang Lianqing nodded seriously. The two looked at each other and couldn't help but burst into laughter again. Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched as he flew up and circled twice in the air. Looking around, he realized that there wasn't a single person in the messy square. He snorted coldly in his heart and flew away. How incorrigible. Do you really think you can escape? Cai Junlang, who was floating in the air, put away the fan in his hand. Together with Zhang Lianqing, he turned into two streams of light and gave chase. On top of a mountain not far away, a ripple-like light curtain appeared out of thin air and flickered. Then, it instantly converged into a transparent crystal bead. 5 people suddenly appeared. Wanlihong grabbed the hovering fantasy immortal bead and turned to Wanling, who was beside him. Are you sure neither of them noticed anything amiss? Wanling pondered for a moment before replying, probably not. She then turned to the hunchbacked old man behind her, cupping her hands in greeting, I'll leave this to Grand Elder. Once those two kill Yu Qianqiu, Grand Elder will need to snatch that 50 billion divine grade spirit stones back. The hunchbacked old man in Muwan's disguise nodded. Watching the 4 of them turn into streaks of light and chase after Huang Xiaolong, he too turned into a streak of light and flew in another direction. After flying out of the messy square, Yu Qianqiu maintained his highest vigilance, pushing his cultivation to the limit as he sped toward the depths of the vast granite mountain range. Flying into a rocky valley, Huang Xiaolong landed at the center of the valley in a flicker. Your guts aren't small at all. Zhang Lianqing's cold harumph sounded in the air. Yu Qianqiu raised his head in apprehension. Even though he had a head start, the other party still caught up to him in the blink of an eye. An immortal realm master was indeed an immortal realm master, not someone a mere spirit-severing realm cultivator like him could compare to. Then I really want to see how big his guts are. I'll teach him a lesson first, lest a dead duck refuses to admit defeat. In the air, Chai Junlang folded the folding fan in his hand, shooting out in a streak of light. Almost at the same time he made his move, a white mist burst out from Yu Qianqiu's body. The streak of light pierced through the white mist, and a loud bang resounded in the valley. Crushed rocks flew in all directions, and the valley rumbled endlessly. The streak of light returned to the air, turning back into the folding fan in Chai Junlang's hand. The white mist dissipated, revealing a 10-meter deep pit in the valley below. However, Yu Qianqiu's figure was nowhere to be seen. Both of them blanked for a moment, then released their divine senses at the same time to scan the entire valley. Unfortunately, not a single person could be found. He escaped just like that. Impossible. With his cultivation base at the deity transformation final stage, there was no way he could escape right under his nose. The two of them looked at each other, then quickly separated to search every nook and cranny of the valley again. In the air, Wan Lihong and the others were also scanning the entire valley suspiciously under the effects of the illusionary immortal beads. They also couldn't see how Yu Qianqiu had disappeared. In short, after Chai Junlang attacked once, Yu Qianqiu disappeared for no reason. It was very strange. All of a sudden, their pupils abruptly contracted. From the 10-meter deep pit in the valley, Yu Qianqiu silently rose from the stone pit and slowly floated into the air. Only after his entire body emerged from the pit did Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang, who were searching the valley, discover him. Both of them stared at him in shock, with expressions of disbelief on their faces. Yu Qianqiu floated in the valley expressionlessly. The hem of his robes fluttered despite the lack of wind, and a violent killing intent surged out from his body. His eyes were half open as he swept his gaze over the two of them. He said indifferently, "You actually dared to attack me. Since you're seeking death, don't blame me for being impolite." The two of them were stunned. Zhang Lianqing then chuckled and said, "I've seen people who don't know life from death, but I've never seen someone who doesn't know life from death. Chai Junlang, keep an eye on him. This brat is a little strange. He can actually hide inside a stone. If we don't teach him a lesson, his foul mouth won't give in." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve, and a ray of light shot out from his storage bracelet, slicing toward Yu Qianqiu's feet at an extremely fast speed. From the looks of it, he didn't want to kill Yu Qianqiu yet. Instead, he wanted to cripple Yu Qianqiu first. Yu Qianqiu's aura had already enveloped an area of several dozen meters. As soon as the ray of light penetrated his aura, his eyebrows twitched slightly. With a boom, the ray of light suddenly exploded into a large cloud of silver powder. This was an extremely bizarre scene. Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang's mouths instantly gaped open, and their eyes were filled with incredulity. The people in the air also looked at one another. Wan Lihong looked at Wan Ling with furrowed brows and transmitted her voice to her. "Ling, are you sure this Yu Qianqiu is only a soul formation final stage cultivator?" Wan Ling paused and looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. "I shouldn't be wrong. I've checked it myself. That's strange. The flying sword that Zhang Lianqing used is at least a level 3 immortal tool. Isn't it a little too terrifying to be able to shatter it into dust without a sound?" Zhang Lianqing muttered with a doubtful expression. Taking advantage of the moment when the two of them were dumbstruck, Yu Qianqiu's aura quickly spread out and locked onto the two of them. Sensing that they were being locked onto, the two of them abruptly came to their senses. They quickly exchanged a glance and disappeared at the same time. Great star-sucking technique. A loud roar sounded from within the valley. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened in anger. He spread his arms, and his claws tore out 2 clouds of white mist. At the same time, his figure abruptly retreated and dodged. His claws were like 2 white ribbons as they retracted into his sleeves. In an instant, the 2 dried corpses that had been drained of water suddenly appeared. They collided with each other at the place where Yu Qianqiu dodged and fell to the ground at the same time. The 2 mummified corpses were struggling to get up from the ground. They looked extremely horrifying, but their movements seemed to be a little slow. The 2 corpses that got up together raised their heads and looked at each other. They seemed to be shocked by each other's appearance and waved their hands to attack each other at the same time. With a bang, the 2 of them were shaken by each other and took a few steps back. Suddenly, they looked at their outstretched hands at the same time and found that not only were they as thin as firewood, but they were also full of wrinkles. Then, they reached out with both hands and touched their faces and bodies. A series of ho-ho sounds of horror came from their shriveled throats. They seemed to want to speak but couldn't make a sound normally. The 2 of them seemed to have scared themselves and retreated in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 2 of them in surprise. He thought, it's really good to have an immortal body. My absorbing star's great technique actually can't kill them. The few people in the air took a deep breath. They were really scared by the strange scene below. Wanling couldn't help but cover her mouth with her hands, afraid that she couldn't help but make a sound. I want to see if you 2 dried corpses have the thick skin of an old monster. Yu Qianqiu's face was ferocious. He waved his sleeves and a 2-meter-long cyan saber appeared in his hand. He floated in the air and said indifferently, "You 2, if you have the ability, quickly run away. Otherwise, don't blame my saber for being merciless." The 2 dried corpses raised their horrifying heads. Their eyes that had shrunk deeply in their eye sockets revealed fear. Without saying a word, they flashed into the air and escaped together. Although they desperately urged their immortal power, the meridians in their body had shrunk a little too much. It was difficult to circulate their true essence like usual. Their flying speed was not much faster than the birds in the sky. Perhaps it was because their bodies were too thin. When they flew up, they immediately drilled out of the loose neckline. Their clothes and shoes all fell to the ground. They saw 2 disgusting dried corpses flying in the sky. It was really a strange thing in the immortal world. Chapter 845. The reason why Yu Qianqiu told them to run was to see how these 2 fellows would react after being hit by his absorbing star's great technique, so that he could accumulate some experience when he fought with others in the future. In the end, he discovered that even though the 2 of them wouldn't die, they had already lost the ability to fight. The corner of his mouth curved into a cold smile. With a few swings of the saber in his hand, he disappeared from the spot and reappeared directly above the 2 flying figures. "The 2 of you, it was you who were heartless first. Don't blame me for being impolite." A voice came from above. Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang raised their heads and were instantly scared out of their wits. Without saying a word, Yu Qianqiu slashed his saber to the left and right. 2 streaks of green light shot out, and 2 heads flew into the air. The 2 dried corpses instantly lost their ability to fly, falling diagonally towards the granite mountain range below. The people in the sky were speechless when they saw this scene. At their level of cultivation, it was rare to see someone fight with their own hands. What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu liked the thrill of raising his saber. Some habits were hard to change. What made them the most speechless was the fact that the Heartless Palace's Grand Deacon's grandson and Carefree Palace's Sect Master's grandson were killed just like that. After this incident, the 2 families would definitely trace the matter back to Wan Gutong, because many people saw them coming with Wan Lihong. At that time, how would they explain themselves? They couldn't possibly tell the 2 families that it was Yu Qianqiu who killed the 2 of them. Wasn't it obvious that they were going against the immortal palace or the immortal emperor? If they had to offend one side, they would rather offend the two families than that terrifying immortal emperor. Ling You've gone too far again. Wan Lihong sighed. Wan Ling was dumbfounded. Not to mention her, everyone thought that Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang might not be able to kill Yu Qianzhou, but no one thought that the two of them would die in Yu Qianzhou's hands. Two late-stage minor immortal cultivators couldn't even defeat a late-stage spirit-severing cultivator. A hunchbacked gray figure silently flashed to the back of a mountain peak and hid behind a huge rock, quietly watching Yu Qianzhou, who was floating in the air. When the people in the air saw this, their pupils shrank. Wan Ling transmitted her voice in shock. First Elder, what are you trying to do? Mu Wan's disguised hunchback elder replied in the direction of the voice transmission, since those two fellows are useless, I'll do it myself. No. Wan Ling hurried to warn Huang Xiaolong through voice transmission, once people find out that you killed an immortal emperor's secret agent, our Wan Gutong will be in big trouble. I don't think so. There shouldn't be anyone nearby. Even if I'm hiding someone, I'll disguise myself. No one will know who I am, and Wan Gutong won't be implicated. As long as I kill that brat, I will immediately go out and spread the news, saying that I saw Yu Qianzhou fighting with Zhang Lianqing and Chai Junlang here, and in the end, both sides were killed. I will make the scene more realistic. Mu Wan paused, and said hesitantly, Miss, you can't be suspecting that I can't kill Yu Qianzhou, right? This person's skills are strange, First Elder shouldn't take the risk. Let's retreat. Wan Ling urged anxiously. Miss, don't worry, it's just a crooked magic art. It's fine against those two fools, but it won't work on me. Mu Wan's tone was confident, but he tactfully rejected. Yu Qianzhou stopped in the air and looked around. He slowly put away the blue flame broadsword. His intuition told him that there was danger approaching him, but there was nothing around him. After a moment's vigilance, he didn't discover anything. In a flash, he chased after the two headless corpses and pulled out the storage bracelets from their wrists. Just as he was about to remove the second storage bracelet, he felt a strong sense of danger approaching him. It was the kind of danger that could take his life in an instant. In the blink of an eye, a ray of golden light flashed and quickly enveloped him. Yu Qianzhou did not hesitate to take out the golden umbrella. Ever since he started practicing the animal fencing technique, he had a deep trust in this kind of instinct, and he had never made a mistake before. Bang! There was a loud sound, like a thunderclap from a clear sky. The strong wind was as fierce as a steel knife, sweeping across the ground. In that instant, the golden umbrella exploded with a strong golden light, instantly canceling out the sneak attack of the teleportation. At the same time, the power of the attack was reflected back. The sneak attacker's figure was quickly bounced back, and the hunchbacked Mu Wan appeared several dozen meters away. It's you. Yu Qianzhou, who was safe and sound inside the golden umbrella, exclaimed. He immediately recognized that it was the hunchbacked old man who exposed his identity at the entrance of the mythical fire palace shop. At this moment, Yu Qianzhou was so scared that his face was pale and his heart was pounding. He was secretly thanking the heavens and the earth for Bai Changchun. If he hadn't practiced the animal fencing technique that Bai Changchun had taught him, he wouldn't have been able to defend against such an expert sneak attack even if he had the golden bead to teleport. Judging from the power of this palm, it could probably smash him into pieces. He suddenly remembered that when Bai Changchun had taught him the animal fencing technique on Obedient Island, he had secretly laughed that it was an animal world and didn't think much of it. Now that he thought about it, he remembered that Bai Changchun seemed to have said that as long as he mastered it, he would be able to benefit from it for the rest of his life. It seemed that he was right. Woo woo. Old man. I love you to death. Yu Qianzhou hid under the golden umbrella. His legs were slightly weak. He now deeply understood the power of the animal fencing technique. To be honest, he had always been slightly resentful because Bai Changchun didn't teach him any powerful spells or magic treasures. He felt that their master-disciple relationship was somewhat nominal. Only now did he realize that the animal fencing technique that Bai Changchun had taught him was thousands of times more powerful than any spells or magic treasures. This thing was something that could save one's life at a critical moment. What spells or magic treasures could be more important than protecting one's own life? Golden umbrella. Mu Wan, who was sent flying, also exclaimed. Wan Ling and the others in the air also almost cried out in shock. They all knew very well what the golden umbrella was. If the golden thread robe was something that everyone in the Immortal Palace had, then not everyone could have the golden umbrella. Only the 24 protectors of the Immortal Palace had it. These 24 people were the people around Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, and their cultivation was at least at the early Immortal Emperor stage. It was said that the golden umbrella was personally made by Immortal Emperor Jin Tai and was a top-grade defensive celestial treasure. Its defensive power was very strong. No one thought that Yu Qianqiu would have the golden umbrella personally made by Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. No one was shocked by the power of the golden umbrella, but it proved that Yu Qianqiu's previous words were not false. He was indeed Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's trusted secret agent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to obtain a treasure personally made by Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Old thing. Who are you? You dare to sneak attack me? You must be tired of living. Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily. The light from the golden umbrella wrapped around him and shot towards Mu Wan. He pushed his palms out and shouted, Absorbing Star Great Technique. Once this terrifying name was shouted, the people in the air immediately felt their hearts rise to their throats. They didn't know what kind of evil technique this was to be able to squeeze someone dry. Mu Wan also came back to his senses and sneered, It's just a small trick. There's no need to embarrass yourself in front of this old man. After sensing Yu Qianqiu's qi activity locking onto him, his own qi activity quickly burst forth, directly blocking Yu Qianqiu's qi activity outside. He did not move, just stood there and let Yu Qianqiu slowly absorb it. Ha! Yu Qianqiu was surprised. He immediately found that his qi was blocked by the opponent's qi. He quickly stopped and didn't dare to jump forward. Instead, he used teleportation and circled around Mu Wan several times, looking for a loophole to attack. He kept shouting, Suck, 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 I suck. Unfortunately, the opponent's qi was impenetrable. It was as if he was wrapped in an invisible shield. He sucked for a long time but still couldn't suck out a fart. Mu Wan had used teleportation consecutively and used up a lot of his true essence. He knew that he didn't have a chance to succeed, so he quickly retreated and looked at the hunchbacked old man in front of him in shock. Ever since he cultivated the Absorbing Star Great Technique, although he had only used it a few times, he never missed. Even Yan Juexing, who cultivated demonic arts, had suffered a great loss at his hands. However, he met his nemesis today. The Absorbing Star Great Technique was useless against this old thing. Kid, you didn't expect this, did you? Mu Wan snorted and said, I saw the weakness of your evil technique at a glance. As long as one's cultivation has reached the great immortal realm, their qi has been cultivated to the point that it's almost solid, and they can kill people invisibly. As long as they cover their entire body with qi to protect themselves, this evil technique of yours won't have any effect. He didn't explain this to Yu Qianqiu, but to the people in the air. Sure enough, Wan Lihong and the others were enlightened. So that's how it was. Wan Ling looked around and frowned. She transmitted her voice to Mu Wan, Grand Elder, don't waste any more time with him. He has the golden light umbrella to protect himself, and we don't have any powerful immortal treasures with us. We can't do anything to him. If we delay any longer, it'll be disadvantageous to my Wangu Tong, please leave quickly. Mu Wan paused, he was unwilling to give up. He transmitted back, "Miss, with this brat's cultivation, he can't use the golden light umbrella to its full potential. I'll try a few more times, I have a high chance of breaking it." Grand Elder, the golden light umbrella is an immortal treasure personally refined by immortal Emperor Jean Tai. Even if you can break it, have you thought about the consequences? Wan Ling warned him word by word, that will definitely alert immortal Emperor Jean Tai. Previously, we saw that he was only a spirit-severing cultivator, so we thought he was only a spy sent by the immortal Emperor. That's why we dared to attack him. Now that we've confirmed that he's the immortal Emperor's trusted aide, think about the consequences of killing the immortal Emperor's trusted aide. I'm afraid that the immortal Emperor would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. As long as it's someone related to Yu Qianqiu, they will all be implicated. Our Wan Gutong will not be an exception. Mu Wan's heart skipped a beat, but he knew Wan Ling was right. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with reluctance. Yu Qianqiu was also staring at him coldly. With a wave of his sleeve, a purple flying sword floated in front of him. Yu Qianqiu sneered, "I didn't expect you to be able to break my absorbing star's great art." "Good. Then try my flying sword, let's see if you have the ability to break it." Chapter 846. He knew very well that he was safe inside the golden light umbrella, but the difference in their cultivation levels was too great. Based on Mu Wan's speed, there was no way he could hurt him. Thus, he purposely taunted Mu Wan, hoping that Mu Wan would be foolish enough to break through his purple flame flying sword. Then, he would take the opportunity to kill Mu Wan. However, to his surprise, Mu Wan only left a cold humph, then turned into a streak of light and disappeared into the distance. Mu Wan didn't even give him a chance to use the purple flame flying sword. She accepted Wan Ling's warning, not daring to act rashly. In the air, Wan Lihong and the others nodded at each other, then quietly chased after Mu Wan. Before she left, Wan Ling looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. Thinking about how Mu Wan had touched and pinched her face, and how she couldn't do anything to him, her heart twisted uncomfortably. She could only hope that they would never meet again, lest she remembered that disgusting scene every time she saw him. Yu Qianqiu watched as the streak of light disappeared into the distance, his brows knitted together. He was a little confused by Mu Wan's actions. Ambushing him out of the blue, then running away without saying a word. What was the meaning of this? Mu Wan's cultivation level far surpassed his own. Could it be that Mu Wan noticed that his purple flame flying sword was condensed from the purple flame and ran away in fear? Thinking about it, it didn't seem possible. According to his knowledge, even in the immortal world, there weren't many people who had the fortune to see the purple flame flying sword. It was even more impossible for Mu Wan to recognize the purple flame flying sword. This was the first time he had seen something like this, let alone others. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that the problem was with the golden light umbrella. Mu Wan was probably scared away by the treasure from the immortal palace. Thinking of this, he began to worry. If Mu Wan leaked the secret of his golden light umbrella, then it would be troublesome. Who cares, if it really happened, this old man will not admit it even if he was beaten to death, and will instead accuse Mu Wan of framing me. Yu Qianqiu steeled his heart, he couldn't be bothered to think about it anymore. What he didn't know was that he was thinking too much. Mu Wan and Wan Tong's higher-ups would not spread this news, for they had their own concerns. Just think about it, they had already confirmed that Yu Qianqiu was immortal Emperor Jean Tai's trusted aide. If they leaked the news that Yu Qianqiu had the golden light umbrella, Yu Qianqiu would definitely suspect that Wan Gutong was behind this sneak attack. Ambushing an immortal emperor's trusted aide was not something Wan Gutong could afford to offend. Needless to say, Wan Gutong's secret would rot in his stomach. He cautiously looked around several times, not daring to put away the golden light umbrella that he had taken out, fearing that he would encounter another sneak attack out of the blue. After some hesitation, he identified a direction and lightly stomped his feet. The granite on the ground melted, and he sank into the ground along with the umbrella. After, he sank. Good. After, one, Tong had to that he had won, the earth, he and he. Close to 2 hours later, he found himself out of the granite mountain range. Layers of soil appeared around him, and he quickly floated to the surface. When he emerged from the surface, he found himself in a barren land overgrown with weeds. Behind him was the granite mountain range. The barren land stretched as far as the eye could see. Among the lush grass, there were a few tall trees standing proudly. After Yu Qianqiu identified the direction, he didn't hesitate and sped away. On the green and yellow plains, tigers and wolves could be seen chasing their prey. The bloody scene did not attract Yu Qianqiu's attention. His eyes were filled with determination as he flew towards the horizon. Only when he noticed some special terrain would he throw a small silver ball into the air. The purpose of this trip was simple: he wanted to go to the hallucinatory immortal city and register a merchant association. He wanted the merchant association to flourish in the immortal world. He wanted to lead the cultivators in the immortal world to search for the miracle of life. Then, the miracle would begin with him. After flying at high speed for more than 10 days, Yu Qianqiu was in tears. Based on his current flying speed, if he was in the immortal world, he would have circled countless times. But in the immortal world, he had just flown out of this vast plane. How big the immortal world was became a question in his mind. It was another sunset. The sunset dyed Yu Qianqiu, who was flying at high speed in the sky, red. Even though he felt that his cultivation was not bad, he still felt that flying at high speed for more than a dozen days was a little too much for him. He grabbed a handful of elixirs and stuffed them into his mouth. As he flew, he slowly recovered his true essence. He felt that the effect was too slow and was considering when to get some elixirs. Suddenly, he was attracted by the landscape below. Although it was still relatively bright high up in the sky, the ground below was gradually shrouded in darkness. In the dusky twilight, there was a scarlet mountain hilly area. There were few trees and bright red stone mountains everywhere. Yu Qianqiu, who was more or less tired, could not help but jump down. Taking the opportunity to admire the strange mountain scenery, he took a break and recovered his spirit. So he landed on a red stone pillar that was like a towering stalagmite. He looked around and found that the reason why the mountain was red was because of the Danqiu landscape. The mountain was undulating and dangerous, and the stone forest was like a mess. Under the sunset, there was a gray fog that rippled, giving people a feeling of palpitation. The undulating and messy stone forest seemed to hide some terrifying monster. Although the gray fog was thin, it seemed to be able to block people's vision. It seemed that no matter how high one's cultivation was, it would be difficult to peep at the secrets hidden behind it. The surroundings were dead silent. Yu Qianqiu felt that it was a little strange. Curious, he immediately flew into the depths of the gray stone forest. Along the way, he did not find anything unusual. In the depths of the messy stone forest, arched hills gradually appeared. The hills were full of caves of various sizes, and it was unknown how they were formed. Yu Qianqiu circled a few times in the gray fog and landed in front of a tall scarlet hill. Directly in front of him was a cave with a diameter of 5 or 6 meters. It was pitch black inside, and a faint gray fog was curling out from the inside. It looked very strange. After hesitating for a while at the cave entrance, he felt that the immortal world could not be judged by the common sense of the human world, so he did not dare to enter. He stretched out 2 fingers, and a dazzling red spark jumped and condensed at the tip of his finger. It became the size of an egg. He condensed all the ordinary fire in his body into this ball, and with a flick of his finger, it shot directly into the depths of the cave with a whoosh. Only to hear a muffled hum sound from inside the cave, and the entire belly of the mountain seemed to be ignited by the raging fire. The big and small caves on the hill instantly shone with red light, and one after another, flames sprayed out. It was like thousands of fireworks had bloomed together. There was no doubt that the big and small caves on the hill were all connected. The cave entrance that Yu Qianqiu was facing was the place where the fire was the fiercest. The surging flames swallowed his body in an instant. But he did not avoid it, and stood quietly at the cave entrance, letting the fire engulf him. To him, he could not think of any fire in the world that could hurt him. Almost at this moment, from the seemingly empty hill came a series of shrill and angry squeaks. It was so sharp that it pierced one's eardrums, followed by the sound of countless flapping wings. Yu Qianqiu's pupils shrank slightly, and saw that in the raging sea of fire, there were dense black shadows that quickly escaped from the cave entrance like lightning. The squeaks immediately filled the air. After the raging fire rose for a while, it gradually disappeared and shrunk in the cave. Amidst the noise, Yu Qianqiu stared dumbfoundedly at the creatures that filled the sky. He never thought that the fire that he had set up on a whim would actually attract so many creatures. Bats. Each and every one of them was as big as a washbasin, and their bodies were covered in fur. What made Yu Qianqiu feel strange was that the fire that he had released actually did not harm the fur on their bodies. He suddenly recalled a type of bat recorded in the Illustrated Jade Archive. It was called the Enchanting vampire bat, and it lived by sucking the blood of living creatures. Although they were only as big as a washbasin, they could suck the blood of a live cow dry in one breath, and swell to the point where they would not die. The fur on their bodies was not afraid of fire, and the treasures refined from them were the nemesis of cultivators who played with fire. Their bones were born with the ability to control the wind, and were excellent materials for refining flying artifacts. Compared to ordinary flying artifacts, their speed could be increased by about a third. The most valuable part of the enchanting vampire bat was its pair of eyes. Its eyes were born with the ability to confuse a person's mind. After bewitching an animal's mind, the enchanting vampire bat could effortlessly attach itself to the animal's body and suck its blood dry without any resistance. Harvesting its eyeballs could be used to refine a valuable treasure called the lost immortal bead. Even if it wasn't refined into a treasure, it could be directly ground into powder, which was a colorless and odorless poison. Although it wouldn't kill, its greatest effect was to turn a person into a retard. To cultivators, this kind of non-lethal poison was often more frightening than a lethal poison. However, whether it was its fur, bones, or eyeballs, they all needed to be harvested in large quantities to be refined into a treasure. In the immortal world, an enchanting vampire bat could be sold for about 1,000,000 divine grade spirit stones. However, this kind of thing was rarely seen in the market. Those with high cultivation would not bother to get their hands on it, and those with low cultivation would find it difficult to get their hands on it. Although one enchanting vampire bat wasn't scary, if it was a group of them, it would be very difficult to fend them off without the cultivation of a great immortal. Unfortunately for them, enchanting vampire bats were social animals. The scariest thing was, there would usually be one or several vampire bat kings with decent cultivation as their leader. If an outsider wanted to take advantage of them, they would have to have some ability first. And the group of bats that Yu Qianqiu saw at this moment matched the enchanting vampire bats recorded in the Jade Archive. Each of them had a head that looked like a rat's, with pairs of sharp, shining eyes, like the cold stars in the sky. They spread their wings and circled in the sky, their forte being their speed. They came and went as fast as lightning. They seemed to be circling around Yu Qianqiu, with countless eyes that were as sharp as the cold stars staring at Yu Qianqiu. A savage aura was growing stronger. Chapter 847. Yu Qianqiu had a premonition that he was in trouble. It was very likely that these beasts were going to attack him. The pairs of snow-white fangs that were as sharp as steel nails on the rats' faces could explain everything. They were already ferocious. Indeed, as the ear-piercing screams intensified, a bat that was flying across the sky suddenly changed direction and shot toward Yu Qianqiu at lightning speed. It bared its fangs and bit at Yu Qianqiu's neck. "You're courting death, beast." Yu Qianqiu let out a furious bellow, and his 5 claws that were covered in purple light grabbed out. The bloody bat that was pouncing toward him did not even make a sound when it fell into his claws and instantly turned into ashes. Once the bloody bat that was the first to attack died, the other bloody bats that were flying in the sky immediately became agitated. Soon, all of them stopped in the sky. The bloody bats that were the size of washbasins flapped their wings and hovered in the sky. They gathered together and stared at Yu Qianqiu fiercely under the night sky. Their eyes were like the cold stars in the night sky, emitting a demonic glow that could shine into one's heart. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He immediately realized that there was something strange about these fellas' eyes, but it was already too late by the time he reacted. He felt his vision blur, and his consciousness seemed to have fallen into a maze formed by the stars. He bumped around but could not find a way out, and he was trapped in the maze, unable to extricate himself. He could not control his body or communicate with Utopia, and his back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He was fine after experiencing so many storms. If he were to die in the hands of these beasts, he would die too unjustly. His sharp intuition after cultivating animal tricks told him that a strong threat of death was approaching. After the enchanting bloody bats that were hovering in the sky knew that they had affected the other party's mind, the demonic starlight in their eyes retracted. All of them flapped their wings excitedly, revealing their fangs that were as long as chopsticks from their mouths as they swarmed over. In the blink of an eye, they had wrapped Yu Qianqiu up into a ball. Layers upon layers of flapping, they seemed to want to suck a mouthful of Yu Qianqiu's blood. It seemed that human blood was quite a temptation for them. The scene of tens of thousands of enchanting bloody bats fighting for food was very spectacular. Animals were animals. In order to get a mouthful of human blood, they were working together just a moment ago, but now they were killing each other. They pounced and tore at each other, opening their sharp claws to push away the layers of their own kind that were attached to Yu Qianqiu's body, trying their best to burrow inside. The fluffy blood bats piled up like a mountain as they screeched and swarmed around, making one's heart go numb. However, the strange thing was that even though there was an endless stream of blood bats surging over, the swarm of blood bats remained the same size. No matter how many blood bats gathered, the swarm did not grow. On a mountain not far away stood a handsome, clean-shaven man in black. His eyes flickered as he stared at the scene. His brows moved slightly as if he had noticed something amiss. Following that, he rubbed his lips in a circle and mumbled as if he was saying something, but no sound could be heard. However, the blood bats that had piled up on Yu Qianqiu's body caused a commotion. They lost interest in fighting for food and flew away in a hurry, as if they had been frightened by something. They all flew up and fled in panic. In the blink of an eye, they all disappeared into the corners of the mountain. Yu Qianqiu's slightly closed eyes slowly opened. There was a layer of black ash at his feet, and his body was surrounded by a faint purple fog. This purple fog was nothing but a tiny dew of the purple fire. It was a critical moment when his consciousness had been trapped. Perhaps he had sensed the danger, but the life spirit in his dantian had suddenly awakened. A dazzling golden light had exploded from his dantian, instantly dispersing the maze that had trapped his consciousness. As soon as he woke up, he saw the swarm of blood bats swarming over. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt the urge to kill. He had originally felt bad for disturbing everyone's rest because of a moment of curiosity. Who knew that they would want his life? Yu Qianqiu immediately had an evil thought. When the swarm of blood bats swarmed over, he put on a thick layer of golden armor. When his body was covered with biting blood bats, he immediately released a limited amount of the purple fire. He knew that if the purple fire were to burst out at once, it would kill many blood bats, but it would definitely scare away even more blood bats. He suppressed the use of the purple fire because he did not want to alarm the ones behind him. Instead, he killed them layer by layer until he attracted all the other blood bats. Then, it would be time to completely kill this group of beasts. However, to his surprise, this group of beasts seemed to have suddenly become smart. Only a few thousand of them had died, but they all ran away at the same time. It was really strange. Yu Qianqiu slowly retracted the hot purple fog that surrounded his body. His suspicious eyes were slightly startled, and he met the eyes of the man in black on the hill not far away. The two of them looked at each other for a long time, and did not separate. In the end, the man in black was the first to smile. He waved his wide sleeves, cupped his fists, and said, "I am Xiao Changquan. May I know which friend has come to visit my thousand-bat mountain? Please come closer and have a chat." Yu Qianqiu could not see through the depth of the man's cultivation. After thinking for a while, he dashed over, cupped his fists, and said, "I am Yu Qianqiu. Are you the owner of this place, friend?" "You can say so." Xiao Changquan replied noncommittally, but there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. From the way Yu Qianqiu flew over, he vaguely sensed that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was not yet at the immortal realm. However, with his early-stage great immortal cultivation, he could not see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation. It was very strange. What did he mean by, "You can say so"? Yu Qianqiu frowned, but he still maintained his vigilance, and asked, "May I know why friend called me here?" Xiao Changquan turned around and pointed to a tall mountain in the distance. Even though the sky was turning dark, one could still faintly make out the buildings on the mountain. He smiled and said, "My thousand-bat mountain rarely receives guests. It's getting late. If you don't mind, why don't you come to my humble abode and let me be your host?" This. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a while. He wanted to refuse, mainly because he was afraid that it would not be safe. But seeing how polite the other party was, plus he really wanted to make more friends in the immortal realm, he changed his mind and said, "Then I will have to trouble you." "Haha. I am looking forward to having more friends, how can you say that I am disturbing you? I am more than happy to have you. Please." Xiao Changquan waved his hand happily. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand politely, and Xiao Changquan immediately turned into a stream of light and landed on the peak. Yu Qianqiu quickly chased after him. As he flew near the peak, he paused for a moment to look at the building on the peak below. The building on the peak was not big, like a small Taoist temple. But the strange thing was that the whole building was directly carved out of the Danxia mountain. The building and the whole mountain were one. It was a unique scenery. However, no matter how Yu Qianqiu looked at it, he found it indescribably strange. Night had already fallen, so why was there not a single trace of light in the building? No matter how high the other party's cultivation was, this did not make sense. Chapter 848. When Xiao Changquan extended his hand again, the hesitant Yu Qianqiu landed in front of the house. Xiao Changquan smiled and turned to face the house. He waved his hand and slapped his chest. He opened his mouth and spat out dozens of phosphorescent lights that flew to every corner of the house. In the blink of an eye, the stone pillars and walls inside and outside the house were lit up with green flames. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't know that the bowl-like things protruding from the stone pillars and walls were actually fire troughs used for illumination. The entire mountaintop suddenly lit up, standing between heaven and earth like a green jewel. However, to Yu Qianqiu, who was inside, although the hall was bright, it was a patch of green. There was a sense of eeriness and terror everywhere. The green light shone on the smile on Xiao Changquan's face, adding a sense of eeriness. It was very strange. Yu Qianqiu didn't know if he was thinking too much. Although the other party was very polite, he didn't let his guard down. He couldn't be blamed. He knew that on the path of cultivation, life and death were often decided by a thin line. There was no regret, only one need to take care of themselves. Not to mention, this was a strange place. At Xiao Changquan's invitation, the two of them walked into the house with the flickering green light. Yu Qianqiu calmly looked around the house. There were almost no furnishings in the house, only 2 stone chairs separated by a table. The strange thing was that the roof was covered with stone beams, and there were many traces of something being scratched on the stone beams. The layout of this stone house is really strange. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said casually. It's just materials from the wilderness. It can't compare to the luxurious and exquisite outside. Xiao Changquan pointed to the 2 chairs in the middle and smiled. Brother Yu, please sit. Although I don't have anything good in this wilderness, I do have some fragrant tea that is rarely seen outside. Brother Yu, please wait a moment, I'll go get it. Brother Xiao is too polite. There's no need to trouble yourself. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. Of course, of course. This is how we treat our guests. I'll be there in a moment. Xiao Changquan insisted. He quickly walked toward the stone door by the wall and walked down the stone stairs. Yu Qianqiu quickly scanned the surroundings. His gaze paused for a moment, fixated on the 2 chairs in the middle. Normally, the surface of a stone chair that people often sat on would be smooth, but the surface of these 2 stone chairs was rough, as if no one had ever sat on them. He tilted his head and glanced at the stone door. Then, he gently floated up and silently flew into the stone door, following the stone stairs that spiraled downwards. It was so dark inside that he couldn't even see his fingers in front of him. After going dozens of meters deep into the belly of the mountain, a stone door blocked his way. Yu Qianqiu sneered and directly entered the wall beside the stone door. After fusing with the stone, he immediately sensed that there was a rather large space in the belly of the mountain. As he approached the edge of the space, the stone in front of him automatically melted to reveal a small hole the size of a soybean. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and looked through the small hole. Inside, Xiao Changquan was indeed seriously boiling a pot of tea. The light from the small stove illuminated Xiao Changquan's meticulous expression. Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was overthinking. Just as he was about to quietly return, he inadvertently discovered that there were pairs of cold, star-like eyes shining on the stone wall behind Xiao Changquan, opening and closing from time to time. Enchanting blood bats. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes. He was all too familiar with this kind of gaze. He had almost fallen prey to it before. So, he carefully looked again. He would not have known if he had not looked, but when he did, he was shocked. After a careful look, he found that there were countless enchanting blood bats hanging upside down on the stone wall behind Xiao Changquan. If he did not look carefully, he would have mistaken them for the original color of the stone wall in the cave. Yu Qianqiu suddenly sneered again and again. It seemed that snakes and rats were in cahoots. His peeping pupils suddenly shrank. He saw Xiao Changquan pick up the sand pot on the small stove and put it on the tray on the stone table. After opening the lid, he immediately saw that it was steaming hot. It was also at this moment that Xiao Changquan's handsome and indifferent face suddenly became ferocious and terrifying. His mouth suddenly opened wide, as if a gash had been torn on his face. It was a terrifying sight. The most unacceptable thing was that 2 snow-white fangs the length of half a chopstick suddenly flipped out of his open mouth. Xiao Changquan leaned over the steaming sand pot. 2 drops of crystal-clear liquid seeped out of the 2 fangs and dripped into the sand pot. Then, the 2 fangs retracted back into his mouth, and the hideous and terrifying face returned to normal and harmless appearance. Xiao Changquan closed the lid of the sand pot and carried the tray with one hand. He calmly walked towards the stone door. Dog. You actually want to poison me? A fierce look flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He quietly and quickly left the stone wall. When he reappeared, he had already jumped out of the house. Then, he expressionlessly walked to the stone chair and sat down. He slowly waited. He had already guessed Xiao Changquan's identity from the two fangs that were exposed. It was obvious that he was the same species as the bats. He might even be the Bat King of the Enchanting Blood Bats. After a while, Xiao Changquan walked out of the stone door with a tray in his hand. He said with a smile, I've made brother you wait for a long time. Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved his hand. It's fine. Since we were just passing by to rest, it's good to find something to do. Let's start with tea. Xiao Changquan was slightly startled. He didn't understand what Xiao Qian meant. He placed the tray on the table and began to pour tea into the 2 teacups. The tea that was clear like golden soup rolled in the teacup, emitting a refreshing fragrance. Yu Qianqiu's 5 fingers that were placed on the table tapped as he praised, It is indeed good tea, brother Xiao has worked hard. Xiao Changquan placed a cup in front of Yu Qianqiu and smiled. Brother Yu, please have a taste and see how it tastes. Yu Qianqiu picked up the teacup and looked inside. He saw a handful of scarlet and glistening leaves in the teacup. They were very different from ordinary tea leaves. He could not help frowning and said, Brother Xiao, why are these tea leaves red? You didn't poison them, right? Ah. Xiao Changquan's face stiffened. He didn't expect Xiao Qian to be so direct. He quickly waved his hand and said, Brother, you misunderstood. This is a specialty of my myriad bat mountain. It is called red leaf tea. It is definitely not poisonous. He picked up the cup in front of him and took a big sip to show that it was not poisonous. I've never heard of a poisonous snake being able to kill itself with its own poison. Yu Qianqiu silently cursed before laughing. I'm just joking. Brother Xiao doesn't need to take it seriously. If I really suspected the tea was poisoned, I wouldn't have said it out loud. Besides, I have no enmity with Brother Xiao. Plus, I don't have anything valuable on me. Brother Xiao has no reason to harm me. Don't you think so? Yes, yes, yes. Brother Yu really knows how to joke. Hee hee. Xiao Changquan laughed to cover up his embarrassment. In fact, he was very nervous because of Yu Qianqiu's words. He couldn't figure out Yu Qianqiu's cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to waste so much effort. If he really found out that the tea was poisoned, it would be troublesome. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would be even more forthright than he had imagined? He picked up the teacup and didn't even taste it, directly pouring the tea leaves into his mouth. Like a cow drinking water, he gulped it all down. Xiao Changquan was stunned. Yu Qianqiu slapped the cup on the table and wiped his mouth. Good tea. Another cup. Actually, if it wasn't poisoned, the tea would be a rare good tea. But what made Xiao Changquan speechless was that if you poured the tea directly into your stomach, can you drink good tea? Xiao Changquan naturally wanted him to drink more, so he filled his cup with the sand pot. Who knew that before the sand pot was put down, Yu Qianqiu picked up the cup and poured the tea into his mouth. He slapped the cup on the table and shouted again, Good tea. Another cup. Xiao Changquan smiled apologetically and continued to pour water into the cup. Yu Qianqiu was still the same. He picked up the cup and drank it without any hesitation. In the end, cup after cup, the sand pot was quickly finished by Yu Qianqiu. Looking at the empty sand pot, Yu Qianqiu frowned. It's good tea, but there's not enough. Do you have more? Ha, ha. Xiao Changquan laughed awkwardly. If brother Yu wants more, I'll go brew another pot. Although he said that, he didn't take action. He looked at Yu Qianqiu suspiciously, as if asking why there was no reaction. Yu Qianqiu saw from his eyes that it was time for him to be poisoned, so he made an sound, rubbed his forehead, and said with a bitter expression, "Why do I feel a little uncomfortable, a little dizzy, this tea?" Before he finished speaking, he closed his eyes and directly slid down from the chair to the ground, motionless. Ah! Xiao Changquan stood up abruptly. At first, he was happy, but then he was stunned. He muttered to himself, "This poison can only hurt one's mind. I've never seen it make someone unconscious. Yes, this guy must have drunk too much. He deserves it." He turned around and walked to the door. Standing at the door, he looked up at the sky and let out a long whistle. Not long after, chattering noises rang out in the night sky. A group of black shadows flew across the starry sky and swarmed over. Yu Qianqiu was very familiar with the chattering noises. He couldn't help but open his eyes to peek. He wanted to see what the fairy was going to do to him. In fact, he had the same worries as Xiao Changquan. He couldn't figure out how powerful the fairy was, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He could only take one step at a time. If it really didn't work, he could only flash back to Utopia to hide. Suddenly, there was a rush of flapping wings outside the door, and a group of black shadows quickly flashed in. After circling in the house for a while, all of them hung upside down on the beams of the roof, folded their wings, and stared at the roof beams with cold star-like eyes. It was the ecstasy bloody bats. Only now did Yu Qianqiu react. It turned out that the stone beams on the roof were for these beasts to step on. No wonder there were so many scratches on them. They were all scratched by the claws of these beasts. Xiao Changquan, who strode back, summoned a black net from his storage bracelet. With a flash of black light, it immediately tied up Yu Qianqiu tightly. Xiao Changquan waved his hand and said, "Bring him back to the ancestor." Chapter 849. When Yu Qianqiu heard that, he immediately felt depressed. There's also an ancestor. There's a super old monster behind this guy. What the hell? The sound of flapping wings could be heard on the roof. A group of bats hanging upside down on the roof beam swooped down and grabbed onto the net, flapping their wings in unison. Yu Qianqiu felt his center of gravity become unstable, and the lingering stench was unbearable. His entire body had already left the ground and was moving. This feeling was very unpleasant, so he opened his eyes and looked around blankly. When Xiao Changquan saw this, he was shocked. However, when he saw that Yu Qianqiu's eyes were blank and lifeless, he immediately laughed and waved his hand. "Brother Yu, the taste of this tea must be pretty good. Ha! Have a safe journey. I'm sure my ancestor will be very happy to see you. I won't be sending you off." Yu Qianqiu looked at him blankly, as if he had never seen him before. His entire body was dragged out of the house by a group of large bats. He looked at himself getting further and further away from the building at the top of the mountain. Xiao Changquan was still standing outside the house and waving at him with a smile. "Dog, don't be happy too early. There will be a time for you to cry." Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and cursed in his heart. Actually, when he poured the poisonous tea into his mouth, it was directly sent to Utopia to water the plants. He didn't touch a single drop. He was fully capable of escaping now, but after thinking about it, he decided to let nature take its course and take a look. If he wanted to take revenge, he had to find out the other party's background first. If he wanted to take revenge, he wouldn't even know what was going on. If he wanted to do it, he had to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. A group of blood bats used a net to slowly drag Yu Qianqiu into the depths of the mountains. Actually, it was quite comfortable to sway like this, but the stench emitted by the group of bats was really unpleasant. Yu Qianqiu resisted the urge to explode. Under the starry sky, the ground was like an abyss, making it impossible to know where one was. The group of bats surrounded Yu Qianqiu and slowly descended into the largest abyss. After descending for about 100 meters, they dragged him horizontally into a cave in the mountain wall. The cave was quite long. After flying for a while, a warm and gentle light gradually appeared. Yu Qianqiu felt quite curious and wanted to see his surroundings. However, he was completely blocked by the damned bats, and he could only vaguely sense the light shining in. Yu Qianqiu felt quite curious. Just as he was turning his head to look around, he suddenly felt himself losing his balance. His eyes lit up, and the blood bats released their claws, allowing him to fall rapidly. His eyes lit up. The group of blood bats had already released their claws, and he was falling rapidly. Before he could react, he heard a bang sound. Yu Qianqiu was in a daze, and his face was twitching. He could only watch as the group of bats flew back the way they came. Soon, he was attracted by the environment he was in. This was a huge palace, and it was a rare jade palace. Everywhere was smooth and white jade, and there were all kinds of jade carvings. There was even a milky white luminous pearl that was the size of 2 fists hanging on top of the palace. The gentle light was reflected in every corner of the jade palace, and it was very beautiful. The entire jade palace was integrated, and it should be a jade palace that was directly excavated from a large jade vein. Such a luxurious scene made Yu Qianqiu secretly exclaim in admiration. This was really a good place. As he was looking around, his eyes suddenly froze, and his pupils suddenly shrank. On the 9-step-high platform in the main hall, there was a thick jade couch, and on it sat a man in a green robe with his eyes closed. He had green hair, green eyebrows, and a green mustache. He had a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks. Needless to say, this person must be Shao Changquan's ancestor. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a while, and just as he was considering whether to leave, he suddenly saw the man on the jade couch open his eyes. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He suddenly had the urge to laugh in his heart. He finally understood why a person would be described as shifty-eyed. The word shifty-eyed was simply born for this person. But this person didn't know that he had a mustache that belonged to a rat. However, his pair of small eyes that were rolling around were still quite spirited. Another one. It just so happens that I haven't had one in a long time. The man with the protruding mouth, monkey cheeks, and rat eyes nodded with satisfaction. He slowly floated out of the couch and stood on the ground, swinging his incomparably wide sleeves as he strode over. Without a word, he raised his foot and kicked Yu Qianqiu's thigh twice. He twirled his mustache and clicked his tongue. I really couldn't tell. You don't look strong, but your body is full of muscle, and you must have a lot of blood essence. You're only at soul formation stage, how come you can't even see through me? The strength of those 2 kicks was not small, and Yu Qianqiu had to clench his teeth to restrain himself from cursing. Just as he was thinking about how to find an opportunity to launch a sneak attack with the purple flames, he saw the azure-clothed man open his mouth and spit out an egg-sized bead. The entire bead shone with a dazzling azure light, and it was filled with a boundless and powerful aura. It instantly lit up the entire palace, and it was extremely eye-catching. The cyan bead slowly floated towards Yu Qianqiu, who was trapped in the net. The cyan light shone in all directions. Every time the azure light was spat out, Yu Qianqiu could feel a huge pressure pressing down on him. Every time the bead retracted, he felt as if the blood in his body was about to burst out. The azure bead slowly moved along the surface of Yu Qianqiu's body. Yu Qianqiu gripped a purple flame in his palm, and he secretly complained. His entire face was flushed red as he forcefully resisted and endured, hoping to find an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. The man excitedly rubbed his hands together and cackled. Not bad, not bad. Your physique is not bad. This is a delicious meal, let me have a good taste. Yu Qianqiu was greatly shocked. It was clear that the opponent was going to make a killing move, but he didn't have the confidence to land a hit. From the corner of his eyes, he saw the azure bead moving up from his lower body, and his heart suddenly moved. Almost at the same time, Yu Qianqiu made up his mind. With lightning speed, he directly broke through the net and grabbed the azure bead in his hand. He quickly teleported to the corner of the palace, and with a flash of purple light, the net that was binding him turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. The man in blue was stunned. He couldn't believe that someone could easily break through the black gold net. After he came back to his senses, he angrily screamed, "Give me back my inner core." "Stop!" Yu Qianqiu shouted. He didn't dare to let the man near him. The hand that was covered in purple light tightly held onto the azure bead in his hand. However, the azure bead in his hand was not under his control. It struggled more and more, and it was not something that he could control with his cultivation. Left with no choice, the power of the purple fire suddenly exerted pressure on it. The azure bead in his hand let out a sizzling sound, trembled, and immediately became obedient. To be honest, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to destroy the azure bead in his hand. Without a doubt, the treasure that was hidden in the opponent's body was definitely not simple. It was just the right thing to use to threaten the opponent. If he destroyed it, the opponent would definitely fight him to the death. As long as he couldn't kill the opponent, he would undoubtedly make a mortal enemy in the immortal world. Just as he used the purple fire to pressure the azure bead, the man in blue let out an "ah" and held his head with both hands, letting out a shrill scream. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He looked at the azure bead in his hand and realized that this thing was actually connected to the strange man's body. If the azure bead was damaged, the opponent would also be implicated. Thinking about the two words "inner core" that the opponent said, he immediately understood. It must be the opponent's inner core, no wonder. Looking at the strange man who was trembling in pain, Yu Qianqiu immediately had an evil thought. If he directly destroyed this inner core, would he be able to get rid of this future trouble? With this evil thought in mind, he immediately put it into action. Purple light circulated in his palm, and the incomparably strong and intense temperature of the purple fire instantly acted on the azure bead. The green-clothed man immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body exploded into a cloud of green mist with a "wang" sound. A huge green shadow appeared and flew around the huge palace while screaming, "Wah wah. Quickly stop, we can discuss anything." His cries for mercy echoed in the palace. Yu Qianqiu stared dumbfoundedly at the huge green shadow that revealed its original form. The opponent's original form was actually a huge green bat with a wingspan of 5 to 6 meters. He had never seen such a huge bat before, and it was green in color. Hearing the opponent say that everything could be discussed, Yu Qianqiu's eyes brightened. He immediately regained his composure and controlled the power of the purple fire. The huge green bat's body softened, and with a "pada" sound, it fell to the ground while shivering. It was truly a huge lump, and it was an eye-opener for Yu Qianqiu. Buzz! The green mist exploded, and the huge bat once again transformed into its human form. It crawled on the ground while shivering, and wailed, "Xiao Changquan, you little bastard, I have always treated you well, yet you dare to frame me." It was crying so pitifully that even if someone's parents died, they might not necessarily be as sad as he was. Yu Qianqiu looked at the azure bead in his hand and immediately laughed. It really was a lucky hit. He didn't think that he would be forced to act, and he would actually be able to grab this old monster's weak spot. Interesting. He immediately coughed and said, don't cry so much, this matter has nothing to do with that little bastard. I was the one who let him capture me. Ah. The bluish-clothed man suddenly stopped crying. He raised his tear-stained face and choked with sobs. Is what you said true? I am a person who dares to say anything, but I will never lie. Yu Qianqiu patted his chest as a guarantee, and then immediately sneered. That little bastard actually tricked me into drinking poison tea, but he found the wrong target. How could a mere poison tea do anything to me? So I beat him at his own game. I wanted to see what that little bastard was up to, see who his backer was, and why he dared to scheme against me. I didn't expect you to be the backer who allowed him to run amok. Today, you are out of luck. Hearing that it was like this, the bluish-clothed man immediately stopped crying. Instead, he appeared to be somewhat comforted. He waved his wide sleeves to wipe away his tears, and directly stood up. However, his legs were still a bit weak, and he swayed a few times before stabilizing himself. It was clear that he had suffered quite a bit just now. On his already pale face, his small eyes darted around, and he cupped his hands in apology. This is truly a misunderstanding. Normally, that little bastard Xiao Changquan wouldn't easily make a move against others because we also don't want to cause trouble. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.